Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on What If Harry Was Secret Son of Superhero and Got Superpower So Do for Blue Hearts. Comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Harry x Hermione uncensored spicy version, link in description. Harry Potter wanted to be a superhero. He really did. Not for power, money or anything that mundane. But for acceptance, praise and maybe love. For many years he tried to please his relatives with no luck. He did every chore they gave him to the best of his ability. From doing laundry, cooking breakfast and dinner and cleaning rooms. But they never praised him or shown him even tiny bit of love. He even got the best marks in his finals hoping it will make his relatives like him better. But they only criticized him for showing up his cousin. That was when he realized that he would never find acceptance from them. But he knew there were many people out there. Many good people who would accept him and love him. He knew that because he saw so many children every day being kissed and hugged and accepted by the adults. But he had a problem. How could he get that acceptance from an unknown stranger? And for many months he thought about it. Until one day he found the answer. And it seems is not without a sense of irony, for the answer came from those he knew would never accept him and appreciate him. The answer was in a present Dudley, his cousin, got for Christmas of his second year at school. It was a huge collection of comic books, which his Aunt Marge gave him. And like every year Harry got none. But he watched Dudley from his cupboard under the stairs. He wanted to know what got Dudley so excited. So after a few weeks passed, and Dudley forgot about his presents, Harry borrowed the books one at a time from Dudley's room when he went to clean it. And to say he was hooked would be an understatement. He fell in love with them. Not with the stories themselves, but with the idea of being a hero. A superhero. He saw that many of the heroes in the storybooks had very few friends or were unpopular or had bad childhoods just like him. But they still helped people and the people loved them. He dreamt about it day in and day out. He dreamt about saving people and being praised for it. He dreamt of being a superhero. It became a constant thought in his mind. It became an obsession. But he didn't have any superpowers. Did he? He thought about it long and hard. He tried to remember every single incident the Dursleys blamed him for being a freak. But what was a freak? Many normal people thought the superheroes were freaks too, didn't they? That was, until the superheroes helped them. Harry smirked. He didn't have a problem with being a freak. He sat down in the school library, one of the few places he was free from Harry hunting, and started making a tea of all the times something unexpected happened around him. There was the time his teacher's hair turned blue. It happened right after she scolded him for trying to disturb Dudley, when it was Dudley who was trying to push him from his chair. That was when he was 5 years old. He remembered being angry. But there was something else before that. He scrunched up his eyes and thought real hard day. Hurriedly hoping he would remember that moment. And just like that he did. He felt a little warm and then he was seeing himself, like he was seeing the memory in a TV. He was 3 years old and sitting on the floor. While Aunt Petunia had Dudley in a baby seat and fed him chocolate pudding. He was hungry and he really wanted to eat the cookies he saw Aunt Petunia put on the table. That was when the cookies started floating down to him. Just as he caught the cookie and took a bite out of it, Aunt Petunia screeched. She pulled him up by his hand and dragged him into the cupboard. Harry remembered not eating food that day. And very recently, just a couple of months back, the sweater his Aunt Petunia tried to force on him shrank until it was fit for only a doll, as he fervently hoped it would. These were the 3 incidents he remembered and he put them on paper. Harry was a very intelligent child. But few knew it, as the only area a child of his age could show his intelligence was in the classroom and that avenue was blocked. As he didn't want to get punished for showing up Dudley. From the 3 incidents he wrote on his paper, he tried to find something in common. Where did his power come from? Spider-Man got his power from being bitten by a spider. Superman came from another planet. He didn't understand how, but he knew he was special. And so after school, he ran to the park every day to practice his powers. Many months passed with no luck. But he never gave up. He firmly believed that it was his destiny to be a superhero. It was the last day of his second year at school, when it happened again. Dudley and his gang were chasing him, to give him a beating as an end-of-the-year present. He ran around a building and jumped behind a bunch of garbage cans, desperately hoping to get away from them. And suddenly he was not behind the cans, but up on the school roof. He just appeared there out of nowhere. He looked around with wide eyes and ducked down just as a teacher came into sight. With his beating heart, he laid down on the roof smiling wide. He pumped his fist into the air and cried, yes. This beyond anything proved to him that he was special. But how did he do it? He brought out the piece of paper. He wrote down the list of incidents and wrote down what happened just now. And as he stared at the paper it hit him. All these things happened because he wanted them to happen. No, not wanted, but really wanted with all his heart. He smiled with joy and whooped. He found the answer. He put the paper back in his pocket and peeked down at the ground below. There were still a few children playing around and a teacher nearby. He looked for an area where he can appear on the ground without being noticed. He noticed that there weren't any people near the large tree. And so he scrunched up his eyes and thought with all his might that he wanted to be behind that tree and jumped a little in the air. He opened his eyes to find himself still on the roof. He closed his eyes and tried again. And again and again. As minutes went by and the sun was setting, he started to get scared. If he didn't get down soon, he would be late and he would be locked up in his cupboard for a long time. He closed his eyes and prayed that it would work. He didn't want to be locked up in his tiny cupboard. He concentrated hard on getting behind the tree and jumped into the air. He felt like he was being squeezed and squished. And just like that the sensation was gone and he found himself behind the tree with a loud crack. He leaned against the tree in relief. He was afraid and scared that it wouldn't work. As he slowly walked to number 4 Privet Drive, he wondered if that's why it worked. Maybe it wasn't just really wanting it to happen. Maybe it will why happen if he was afraid or scared or angry or sad? He entered the house, when Aunt Petunia saw him. She scowled at him. You were nearly late. Go wash up and come help me make dinner. Harry followed his aunt's instructions though his mind was elsewhere. That night when everyone went to bed, Harry sat in his cupboard with his hand outstretched. He wanted to create light. With that single thought in his mind, he tried to bring up his feelings of how afraid he was that he was going to be late to cook dinner. And soon he nearly forgot his primary reason for doing what he was doing, as he remembered all the times he went hungry and cried himself to sleep. A visible shiver went through him as he experienced a multitude of emotions. He snapped his eyes open to see the cupboard filled with brilliant light emitting from a ball of white light formed in his outstretched hand. He gave the light a tired little smile and stared at it for a few minutes. I did it, he whispered to himself. He closed his fist extinguishing the light and laid down on the bed. Though he felt happy about successfully creating light, he wasn't happy about all the things he had to remember to get it done. If he wanted to be a good superhero, he needed to do things quickly. Or else by the time he remembered all these things, the bad guys would do bad things. The first week of summer passed by quickly. Like every year, he had little time to do anything but chores the first week out. But today, he was heading to the local library. These past 7 days, he was able to do a simple task every night. After creating light the first night, he worked on floating a book, fixing a broken toy, opening and locking his locked cupboard door, which helped as he could sneak in food when he was hungry, and finally the same thing he worked on was what he called teleporting. He got the word from a TV program that Dudley was watching and he peeked it while he was cleaning the living room. Though he only tried that once, as he seemed to make a really loud sound when he appeared somewhere. He reached the library and walked up to the librarian, who was a young woman in her mid-20s. She glanced at him and smiled. Hello little guy. First time in the library. Can I help you with anything? Harry gave her a shy smile. Good morning ma'am. Do you have any books on mind or thoughts? The librarian raised her eyebrow. WS at the unusual request from what looked to be a 7-year-old. What exactly are you looking for? Harry looked thoughtful. I want to know if there is a way to think only one thing, and help with feelings. The librarian smiled at him. My, you are a clever child aren't you? What you are looking for is called meditation. That will help you focus your thoughts and also help with your feelings. Or what adults call emotions. Let me get the book for you. Do you have a library ID? Harry's smile vanished at the mention of an ID. His aunt will never agree to that. He ducked his head and shook his head sadly. The librarian sighed. From the state of the child's clothes she could guess that his life was far from perfect. Especially if he wanted a book on meditation at such an age. But he seemed like a clever child and it would be a crime not to help him. All right kid, just this once I will put this book on my own ID. Can I trust you to bring it back when it's due in 2 weeks? Harry looked at her in surprise. You'll do that for me, ma'am. The librarian smiled. You look like a good boy. So I will. You can call me Jess. Harry blushed and gave her a brilliant smile. I promise I'll bring it back in 2 weeks. Quote. She ruffled his hair. You better. So what's your name? Harry, Harry Potter. What the young librarian did that day would forever change the world. That night, Harry took out the book he hid under his large shirt and started reading it. The book was split into 3 parts. The first part talked about internal energy and how to use it to make life better. The second part talked about using energy in meditation and the third part about visualization techniques to concentrate better. Harry didn't understand many words. Those he wrote down in a notebook and with little help from Jess. He used a dictionary to find out exactly what they mean. And so Harry took the ideas from the book and practiced meditation every night for an hour. He started with visualizing his energy, which gives him his powers, as a ball of light, which existed in his tummy. At first the ball just didn't seem right. He worked on many variations, until he decided on a ball of green fire. It was the same green as his eyes and it felt so right. Once he got the ball of energy right, then he imagined a tendril of that energy going from his stomach to his right hand. It wasn't easy, as the ball seemed reluctant to let go of any energy. It was as if it has a force within it, which was attracting the energy back to it. It took many weeks for him to get the tendril into the center of his right palm. After that, he worked on making the tendril stay there. By the time summer ended he was able to make the tendril stay there for 30 minutes before the effort became too much. But, in the 30 minutes the tendril stayed in his palm, he was able to do all the simple tasks with very little effort. One morning while he was cooking bacon, he slipped and his hand fell on the pan, burning it severely. He cried out in pain and rushed to the sink and put it in water. But within a few seconds, his hand started pulsing with a soft green glow and the blistering wound was healed without leaving any evidence. Harry took it out of the water and stared at it in wonder. His aunt just came down after waking up her precious Dudikins. What was that? She shouted. Did you do something? Harry quickly shook his head. Nothing, Aunt Petunia. Just hit my head. Saying that he went back to frying the bacon. His aunt narrowed her eyes and watched him for a few minutes before she grumbled abo. Oot stupid freaks, and went about her work. She missed the small smile that spread across Harry's face. And so Harry went back to his 3rd year of school. He continued being an average student in class, but worked on his powers in secret. Few students ever talked to him, fearing Dudley and his gang. But that didn't bother Harry. He had his own secret friend. Every weekend and any other day he could, he would visit Jess at the library. He would sit with her and tell her about his week. He confessed to her after much prodding that he lived with his aunt and uncle and that they didn't like him. They never hit him or anything. But they don't do much anything else. Though Jess was horrified that Harry had to do all the chores and get less marks than his cousin, she couldn't make anything official out of it as Harry begged her not to. They were his only remaining family after all. By the time Christmas came, Harry's powers improved greatly. Now he could hold his power in both hands for nearly 2 hours. He realized something else about his powers. To a certain extent this energy can understand his needs. He figured this out when he burned his hand and his power healed it without him asking it to. Whereas when he used the knife to make a tiny cut on his hand, his power did nothing until he asked it to. And so he started talking to his energy ball. He would sit down and visualize the 10 drills into his hands and then he would bring a tiny tendril to his mind. It hurt the first time, but after that, it felt fine. Once the tendril reached his mind, he would mentally tell the ball what he wanted. He really wanted to get Jess, his first and only friend, a nice gift for Christmas. And so he asked his energy to create a metal box for him. He sent it a picture of what he had in mind. He felt warm as the power flowed from his energy ball into his hands and then outside. He saw as the power pooled together to form a beautiful bronze ornamental box exactly as the one he saw in one of his aunt's magazines. He created small stuff like papers and pencils before. But never something so big. He also noticed that most things he created would vanish after a few weeks if he didn't concentrate on making them permanent. And so he asked his power to make the box permanent as well. He felt his energy reduce more than ever before. But he still had much more left. So he asked for a gift wrap. And then wrapped the ornamental box himself. The next day he set out to the library, making the gift invisible so that his relatives won't see it, and floated it in front of him. As he reached the library, he looked around to make sure no one was looking before he took the gift in his hands and made it visible. Jess saw him coming and smiled. In the few months she had known him, he became like a little brother she never had. "Hey Harry." Her eyes widened seeing the gift in his hands. "Is that for me?" Harry smiled and hugged her. He gave her the present. "Yep. Merry Christmas." Jess hugged him back and kissed him on his forehead. "Thanks Harry. You know you didn't have to." Harry shrugged. Jess ruffled his hair, and smiled down at the 8-year-old boy. "Well, I have something for you as well. I know I can't give you anything which she scowled at the word, family will notice too much. So I asked Mike to get us a special movie premiere pass for Indiana Jones. How about it?" Harry's eyes shone like search lamps. He loved the last 2 Indiana Jones movies he saw with Jess at her house. Jess only worked for a couple of hours in the morning on weekends. So Harry would leave with her to her house, which was only 3 blocks away, and spend few hours with her. Harry jumped and hugged her again. "Thanks Jess. I'd love it." Jess laughed at his enthusiasm. "Can you sneak out at around 8 tonight? I will pick you up and drop you off at your house after the show." Harry thought about it and nodded. "Wait at the street corner. I will be there at 8. That night Harry excused himself and went to his cupboard right after dinner. He thought about it all day since Jess told him about the show. The only way to be sure that none of his family would know about him leaving would be if they didn't approach his cupboard. So he pulled up his power and asked it to make sure no one would want to come to his cupboard. It took a couple of minutes, but the power pulled in both his hands and then left towards the cupboard door, where it layered itself onto it, creating some kind of barrier. To test if it worked the way he wanted it to, Harry hit the cupboard wall a couple of times with his legs. Bang! Bang! He heard his Uncle Vernon grumble something about inconsiderate freaks. He heard the loud footsteps of his uncle as he walked towards the cupboard and then past it, without even stopping by. He heard him open the refrigerator and then go back into the living room. Yes, Harry fisted the air. He loved his power. He quickly dressed into his best dress, which Jess bought him, and 5 minutes before 8 he teleported behind a tree with a soft pop. He worked on this skill quite a bit over the past couple of months, especially after visiting Jess' house a few times. He was able to lessen the crack, which he understood after a few experiments to be air being pushed away fast. He worked on appearing slower, so that he would make little sound. He saw Jess waiting with her boyfriend Mike, who Harry met when she took him to her apartment the first time. Harry immediately took a liking to Mike, who worked in the film industry and had a similar laid-back attitude like Jess. As Harry walked up to them, Jess gave him a firm hug. "That was a beautiful gift, Harry. How did you get it?" Harry smiled and shrugged. Jess eyed him critically. "You didn't steal it from your aunt, did you?" Harry scowled at her. "Of course not. I would never give you something that belongs to her." Jess smiled. "In that case, thanks." Mike put a hand around Harry's shoulder. "Trying to seduce my girl, are you, Harry?" Harry blushed scarlet and the 2 adults laughed. "Oh, stop it, Mike. He's only 8 years old. I think I will wait a few more years before I let him seduce me." Harry continued to be lush and folded his hands in front of him in mock anger. "You guys are supposed to be adults." "Nah mate, we'll never be an adults. This is too much fun." All 3 got into Mike's BMW convertible and left for the premiere. Harry enjoyed seeing all the film stars, including Harrison Ford and Sean Connery, and thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Mike even introduced Harry to Harrison Ford, who signed his movie pass for him. When Mike took him to meet Sean Connery, the aged actor stared at Harry for more than a minute before he kneeled down to Harry's level. He gave the scar on Harry's forehead a quick peek before he shook Harry's hand. "Well met, Mr. Potter. I hope you like the show." Harry was confused why Sean Connery would be interested in him, but smiled all the same. "Thanks, sir. I loved the movie. I thought it was the best of the 3. Then I am blessed, young man. And I wish you the best of luck for your future. He gave the two adults a nod, before he walked away. Wow! Exclaimed Harry. Then he turned around and looked at Mike suspiciously. Did you say something to him? Mike raised his hands. Whoa, little guy. I wish I had that kind of pull with him. No, whatever it was, it's just you. It remained a mystery to the party of three, but they didn't really care much as they enjoyed the movie thoroughly. So do you want to become an archaeologist like Dr. Jones, when you grow up, Harry? Harry shook his head groggily with sleep in his eyes as he relaxed in the back seat of the car. I want to be a superhero. Jess laughed and ruffled his hair. Mike stopped the car a few houses before number 4 and dimmed the lights. Harry got out of the car and walked to the house. He made sure he was blocking them before he silently opened the door with his power. He turned around and waved to them. After he saw that car roll away, he went inside and locked the door. He silently walked to the cupboard, got inside, locked it and fell asleep. The next morning he was surprised to see that he was allowed to sleep in. It was only after his head cleared of all sleep that he realized it was because of the power layer he put on his cupboard door the other day. He laughed at that and opened his, for lack of a better word, spell book. Every time he asked his power to do something new, he would write in this book for reference. He called this particular task or spell, Forget Me. He changed Hi's clothes and removed the spell on the door, and within a minute his aunt screeched at him. How dare you sleep in, boy? You will not be going out anywhere today. You will help me make lunch and then you will go sit in your cupboard. Harry sighed and nodded. It was worth it. In the following weeks Harry worked on spreading his power to his legs. He realized a few weeks ago, just before school broke for Christmas, that his power when flowing in his hands, made them physically stronger. He didn't know how strong he could be, but it was enough to crush a solid stone, which he caught when Piers threw it at his head. Now he wanted to do the same with his legs. He wanted to fly in the air like Superman. He couldn't resist the smile that appeared on his face as he thought of flying. It was the 06th of May 1989, a Saturday. Harry walked to the park and teleported to just outside Jess' apartment with the softest of pops. He didn't need to worry anymore about people catching him in the act, as for the past few weeks. Whenever he was teleporting he put a forget-me spell on himself. With the spell, even if he teleported right in front of a person, they would not see him. He concentrated a little and removed that spell. He knocked on the door and Jess answered it. Come in, Harry. Lunch is almost done. Where's Mike? Asked Harry. He should be here any minute. Why don't you see what's on the telly? But 30 minutes passed and there was no word from Mike. Jess started to worry. Maybe he was delayed at work or met a friend on the way. Harry's stomach grumbled at that moment and Jess laughed at the blushing boy. Why don't we get started? It will serve him right for being late. Jess was a wonderful cook and Harry enjoyed his lamb stew. But when 1 hour passed with no word from Mike, Jess called the studio. They told her he left 2 hours ago and they don't know where else he could be. That was when Jess started to really worry. Harry tried to console her, but soon she started crying and prayed that he was all right. It was 5 p.m. when they got a call. It was a hospital. Mike was involved in a terrible accident and was being operated. Both of them rushed to the hospital in a taxi. Hay arrived to find that Mike was still in surgery. Jess placed a call to Mike's parents who lived in Glasgow and told them the news. They promised to be there as soon as they can. The doctors came out of the operating room and one of them saw Jess and Harry waiting nearby. Are you a direct relation? I am his fiancé. How is he, doctor? The doctor sighed. I'm afraid it's not good news, ma'am. We did all we can. He suffered severe internal trauma. He might not live past the night. Jess started crying and Harry had tears rolling from his eyes. He took Jess's trembling hand and held onto it. Can I see him? The doctor nodded and led them to the room where Mike was covered in bloodied bandages and tied to a lot of medical equipment. Jess pushed open the door and she and Harry walked in. Jess started sobbing. She caressed Mike's arm and kissed it. Oh, Mike. Please don't do this. Come on, Mike. Please, wake up. As Harry looked at Mike, he got an idea. With all that was happening, it didn't really hit him until now. Jess, he whispered softly. When she didn't respond, he caught hold of her hand and shook it. Jess. She tore her gaze away from Mike and glanced at Harry. I can do. Oh, some things, powerful things, I can try to help Mike. Can you stand behind me so that no one else can see what I am doing?" Jess wiped her leaking nose and stared at the 8-year-old, confused. "What are you talking about, Harry? I'll explain later. Just stand behind me for cover." When Jess didn't move, "Please Jess, trust me." Jess gave him a nod and stepped behind him. "I trust you, Harry." He smiled at her and then leaned forward so that he was standing right above Mike's tummy where he placed his hands gently. "Whatever happens, don't freak out." Harry closed his eyes and pulled up the tendrils into his hands and mind. He sent his feelings of friendship, companionship and love he felt for Mike to his energy ball glowing with green fire. Then with a final thought asking his power to save his friend, he released his hold on it. Jess was awestruck to see Harry's palms starting to glow green. Then, Harry opened his eyes and the green glow from his hands seemed to be sucked into Mike as he started glowing the same color. She could feel the heaviness in the air and it was electrifying. She hoped whatever Harry was doing will help Mike live past this day. Harry could feel he power being sucked out of his energy ball and he started to feel the strain. Just when he thought he couldn't stand anymore, the power flow stopped. Harry staggered backwards into Jess, who caught him and held him. "I'm tired," said Harry with a heavy voice. He tried to keep his eyes open, but he felt so tired. He closed them and relaxed as Jess held him. Jess stared at Mike in wonder, as slowl. Why his complexion returned from deathly pale to a decently healthy hue, and his breathing, which was shallow, evened out. Even his pulse was showing strong and steady on the monitor. She just stood there and stared at her fiancé in wonder. She didn't know how long she was standing there, but soon her hands felt heavy holding Harry for so long. She took him to a nearby cot and laid him down. She knelt down beside him to see if he was all right. Seeing that he was in a deep sleep, he kissed his forehead and went back to pay vigil on Mike. It was a couple of hours later that the doctor that spoke to Jess came in to see Mike's condition. He found Jess sleeping in the chair beside Mike and the boy sleeping in a nearby cot. But the thing that got his attention was Mike's condition. It was a miracle. This man wasn't supposed to live beyond a few hours. Now, he looked quite healthy except for the few external injuries, which will get better in a few days. He double-checked his readings and then triple-checked them. He didn't understand how this could happen, but he was glad a life had been saved. It was a miracle and he will put it down as one of God's mysterious works. It was the next day at around 5 in the morning when Jess heard a soft groan and woke up. She found Mike waking up. She couldn't help the tears that spilled out of her eyes. "Oh Mike." She held his hand and leaned into it. Mike opened his eyes and glanced at Jess. "Hey Jess," he said in a whisper. He smiled at her softly. "I'm all right baby. I feel good." Jess leaned forward and kissed him. "Don't ever do that again you stupid bastard. Or I'll kill you." Mike couldn't help the small laugh that escaped his mouth. "We don't want that." "So, what happened?" "A miracle Mike. The doctor said you will be fine. A few days of rest and you should be on your feet. Now don't worry about a thing. I called your parents and they will be here in a couple of hours. I need to drop Harry off at his home. I'll come back soon. Do you need anything?" Mike shook his head. "Why is Harry here? He came with me when I got the call from the hospital." Mike nodded and closed his eyes. Jess bid him goodbye and walked up to Harry. She shook him slowly. "Wake up Harry. We need to get you home." Harry muttered something in his sleep, but woke up nonetheless. "How's Mike?" he asked groggily. Jess took his head in her hands and met his eyes. "Whatever you did helped him, Harry. You saved his life." Harry smiled, though still a little tired. "Good." Soon they got into a taxi, which pulled up at number 4. "Are you going to be all right?" asked Jess as they both got out of the car. Harry nodded. "Just need some sleep and food. We'll be fine." Jess stared at him for a moment before she hugged him. "You really are a superhero, aren't you?" Harry returned her hug with a smile, but didn't comment. "So, will you tell me what you did?" "I will. Promise. Maybe once Mike gets better. I'll hold you to that," said Jess, "and thanks again for what you did, Harry. I know I can never repay you." Harry shrugged. "You and Mike are my friends. You are more of a family than my relatives are. That we are little brother. Now, off with you. Get some rest. I'll see you next weekend if not sooner." Harry nodded. He silently opened the door, waved to Jess, locked it behind him and dragged himself into his cupboard. He put up his F. or get me spell on the door and slept with a smile on his face. He was glad that he decided to become a superhero. Arabella Fig was concerned. As a squib there were only a few magical things she can do. One of them was communicating in a sort of way with her Kneazles, which looked like large house cats. Very few people think twice about a squib in the magical world. One of those few was Albus Dumbledore. When he asked Arabella to keep an eye on Harry Potter, she readily agreed. And over time she kept an eye on the lad, if not overtly. She knew there was no love for Harry within the Dursley household. She saw how he stayed silent whenever she was asked to look after him for a few hours. There was no curiousness that one can expect in a child and he accepted whatever she gave him. She told Dumbledore that Dursleys were no good for someone like Harry. But he said the same thing he always did. As long as he wasn't abused, it was the safest place for Harry. And so she kept quiet and made the lad was safe from external and internal threats as best as she could. But recently in the last few months, something has changed with Harry. He developed a keen friendship with the local librarian and her boyfriend. They were clearly muggles and obviously cared for the boy, if the many hugs the woman gave the child were any indication. And recently he had been spending time at their place. Though he always came back home to sleep. That was until today. He saw the woman, Jessica Smith, arrive in a taxi with Harry and drop him off at the Dursleys' doorstep. Arabella had been awake all night to make sure Harry got home safe. She was about to call Dumbledore in another couple of hours, when she saw the taxi. She was pleased with the way the woman looked at Harry. It was that of a mother looking at her child. If anyone deserves happiness it was Harry. Dumbledore told her to let him know if any new adults were to come into Harry's life. She smirked as she got back to her home and closed the door. It wasn't her fault if she thought he only meant wizards or witches. Why would two muggles matter really? Indeed, by the time Mike was out of the hospital and back on his 2 feet it was mid-June. Harry spent few hours every weekend in the hospital helping Mike get better. It took him a whole 3 days to get his full energy back after saving Mike. On the first weekend since the accident, he made sure that he was alone with Mike and Jess. He developed a skill for just this occasion. He let his power flow around the door and windows of the room Mike was in, creating a protective layer against overhearing. He called it the silencer. To that, he added another layer of forget-me and he was good to go. Now, even while people walked by the room, they won't hear a thing. After that he explained to a wild-eyed Jess and Mike about his powers and how he helped Mike. Then he showed them by fixing Mike's broken leg ever so slightly. Both the adults agreed that such a power needs to be kept a secret and anything more than what Harry did in a single day might be suspicious. So Harry took his time and helped Mike get better slowly. He still reduced his recovery time by 50%, which impressed the two adults and made Harry very proud and happy. Mike and Jess lay in each other's hands after finishing up with strenuous and enjoyable bed activities. I want to adopt Harry. Mike, who was stroking Jess' hair, stopped for a second, surprised. You want to adopt Harry? Yeah, he's such a great kid. Those relatives of his don't deserve him. Mike didn't answer at first and Jess pinched his hand. Ouch, that hurt. She pinched him again. Okay, I got the point. You know I don't mind. He saved my life. The least I could do is give him a decent life. But what about him? What would he say? I don't know, responded Jess slowly. And so Harry was happily surprised when both Jess and Mike asked him that same question on his weekend visit to their home. He hugged Jess and cried in her arms. This was something he always wanted. Thanks, Jess. I really love to. But the Dursleys will never go for it. Jess pursed her lips in anger. Oh, I will make them pay if they don't. One phone call to social services about your sleeping arrangements will do the trick. Harry shook his head. No, Jess. I might not like it there, but getting them in trouble will only make it worse. And I don't want anyone poking into what's happening around me. You are the only two people who know about my power and I would like to keep it like that. Jess tried to protest. But Harry, what they're doing. It's nothing, Jess, said Harry cheekily, and with my powers they forget about me most of the time. After a few more arguments, both Jess and Mike gave up on the adoption topic. So little hero, what other things can you do? Harry smirked. He took a step and disappeared with a soft pop appearing behind Mike instantly. "Bloody hell, mate," exclaimed Mike, while Jess stared at him with wide eyes. "So can you go anywhere like that?" Harry smiled. This was the first chance he got a chance to show his skills in other than curing people. "Only to places I have been before. Can you take me?" asked Mike. I never tried. You two are really the only people I told about my powers. Want to try?" "Sure," shouted Mike, happy about being involved with superpowers. So Harry took Mike's hand and concentrated for a second, asking his power to take Mike as well, and he successfully teleported a few feet. Mike looked a little unbalanced and pale upon entry, but he shrugged it off. "Felt like I was being squeezed through a tube." Harry nodded. "Takes time to get used to it. I want to try as well." And so Harry took Jess for a trip across few feet. And later on he showed them all the things he could do, including making Mike forget about them. Every time he tried to find them, he remembered something else, which amused Jess. After a while, Mike got a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, Harry, your power resembles something like magic. I remember reading comics and later novels on Merlin and other wizards." Harry nodded. "I thought about it, especially since my relatives AYS said that there was no such thing as magic. But all the wizards I read about always needed a staff or some other thing, including Gandalf the Grey, so I thought my power was something else." "Good point. So what else are you planning to try?" Here Harry smirked. "I want to fly." Jess laughed aloud. "Only you, Harry, can say something like that and make it happen. Have you tried it?" He shook his head. "Most of the stuff I have been doing other than teleporting only needs my hands. But for flying, I need my legs. I am done though. I can hold my power for 3 hours in both my hands and legs." Then he smiled shyly. "I was hoping you guys would be there to watch me take off for the first time." Both the adults smiled lovingly at the Wonder Kid. "In this case, I insist. But I have a question. Won't everyone see if you take off into the air?" Harry nodded. "I can put a forget-me on myself and they won't see me. But then what about us?" Harry thought about it. "I have to ask my power to let only you and Mike see me. I never tried that before." "Why don't you try it in the house, Harry?" suggested Mike. "See if you can do it safely first and then we can figure out what to do outside. Remember, there are many more dangers like birds, planes, and electric cables. And if others can't see you, then you need to look out for things in every direction." Harry felt a little disappointed, but Mike was right. There were so many things that could go wrong outside. So taking Mike's advice, he started working on it in their home after Mike closed the windows and shut the shades. He pulled the tendrils to his arms, legs and mind. Then he gave a vision of slowly raising from the floor to his power. And slowly he did. He smiled at the adults as they clapped in appreciation. Then he stretched out his hand and sent his power a vision of flying horizontally like Superman. He wasn't able to get it exactly horizontal, but it was slightly diagonal and he was able to move around the house without any problem. Though he kept bumping into stuff. He kept an eye on the energy this skill was taking him, and he could probably keep it going for half an hour before he got tired. "He me," said Mike and Jess that he would not fly outside until they gave him their permission. In a way, Harry accepted them as his guardians and they accepted Harry as their charge. Before he left for the day, Mike suggested Harry think about ways to combining his skills. "What do you mean, Mike?" "Like, you apply a forget-me every time you teleport, right? So see if you can combine that, so whenever you teleport, you will always have the forget-me on you." Harry thought it was a brilliant idea and agreed to work on that. Over the next few weeks until summer holidays, Harry worked on his flying skills at Jess's home every day. Jess had a brilliant idea of asking Petunia if Harry, who seemed to spend a lot of time in the library, could help her as she was understaffed. When she agreed to pay Harry £5 a day and even provide him with dinner, she finally agreed. So for the last 6 weeks, Harry was spending most of his time in either school or at Jess' home. He only went back to number 4 to sleep in the morning to cook and have breakfast. The Dursleys were pretty happy with the arrangement and didn't complain. Mike introduced Harry to many of his favorite fantasy books and movies including Star Wars. Harry simply loved the Jedi mind trick. He really enjoyed using it on Dudley to make him walk away whenever he tried to bully someone. It was hilarious when Dudley punched Piers Polkiss for saying he was a coward for not bullying a first-year girl. Harry had nothing to do with that. He simply suggested that Dudley leave the girl alone. Piers took that as one too many offenses by Dudley and called him on it and got his just reward. Harry laughed all the way to Jess' house, and when he explained what happened, the couple joined him as well. But Mike reminded Harry one of his favorite quotes. "With great power comes great responsibility." Harry understood and agreed with that. He promised not to use his mind trick to harm anyone. And so the third year of schooling ended on a high note for one Harry Potter. It was the 29th of July and his 9th birthday was only 2 days away. Jess and Mike had something special planned for him, though they wouldn't tell him how much ever he begged them. And secretly Harry really enjoyed this suspense. Harry smiled to himself as he lied on his mattress in the cupboard. For the first time he wondered if his parents would have been like Jess and Mike. He hoped they were. He tried using his power to see what his parents looked like. According to Aunt Petunia, he lived with his parents for 15 months before they died in a car crash. So he must have had some memories of them. But whenever he tried accessing them, he felt a severe pain where his scar was. All he could see was a brilliant jet of green light and maniacal laugh. In his younger years, he woke up to that nightmare a few times. But since he started working with his power, there have been no nightmares. He simply asked his power to protect him from them and it did. Since then every night he slept. He always had a pleasant dream and never a nightmare. He outlined his scar with his finger and wondered if this might be his superhero symbol when he grew up and had his own costume. He had to have a costume. Every superhero did. That gave him an idea and he wondered why he never thought about it before. He sat in his meditative position and sent the familiar tendrils to his hands and mind. Then he placed his hand on the scar and asked his power to show him why it pained when he tried to access his memories of his early childhood with his parents. And for the first time, his power failed him. It wasn't able to show him what he wanted, but instead it gave him a feeling of anger, hate and malevolence coming out of the scar. Harry paled and nearly threw up at what he felt like drowning in a black inky substance. But what worried him was the tendril of power that was connected from his energy ball to the scar. He never saw that before. He got back into the sitting position and went back into his power vision. This time he also envisioned what he got a glimpse of. The lightning scar with a tendril of power connected to his energy ball. He stared at that particular tendril and asked his magic to show what is happening with his energy and that scar. That's when he saw that his power was being channeled out to some other place through that scar. He couldn't have that. He asked his energy ball to stop giving that scar any more power and to pull that tendril out of it. His energy ball pulsed a brilliant green and he felt crippling pain from his scar. He cried out loud and grabbed his scar. It was bleeding. He knew at that moment, something nasty was in it and he wanted it out. And so he gave his energy ball a firm command. Short of killing him, he wanted that thing destroyed, and he also threw in a command to protect him from any harm. And as his power went to work attacking the tendril and slowly pulling it back, Harry lost consciousness through sheer pain. That was the first night in the last year that he experienced the nightmare of the green flashing light and the maniacal laughter. While Harry was lying on the bed sweating and bleeding from his scar, his energy ball pulled the last piece of the tendril out of the scar. It was at that moment that thing inside the scar tried to attack Harry's mind. But the energy ball followed Harry's command and protected him from it, fighting it and finally crushing it with everything it got. If not for Harry's silencer spell on his cupboard, the other 3 Dursleys and even the surrounding houses would They heard the dying wail that lasted for more than 5 seconds. As it were, no one heard the death of a disgusting soul piece. In a faraway land, a malevolent soul, which possessed a snake, woke up. Something had changed. It felt weaker. It was only in the last year it gained enough power to understand who and what it was. Now, it felt weaker again. But the memories remained. He was once a powerful wizard, a dark lord. Now he was nothing but a wandering spirit, all because of a miscalculation. But why did he feel weaker? Did something happen to his anchors? He needed to check on them. But first he needed a human body. Back in Harry's body, after that thing that was attacking Harry's mind was gone, the energy ball started putting layers of protection around the mind so that it could protect him better as Harry commanded. With these layers also came a permanent tendril that was attached to the ball. After that it started healing Harry's body automatically as it had done many times when he was wounded. Finally, after it was sure Harry was safe, it started to find the one thing it wasn't able to do before. Find him memories of his parents. When Harry started talking to his energy ball, nothing wonderful and extraordinary happened. The energy ball started developing a certain level of sentience. It couldn't come up with new ideas on its own. But within the scope of Harry's commands, it can think and perform to the best of its ability. And so it went to search. When Harry regained consciousness in the morning, it was to a fierce headache. He groaned and rolled around trying to get his thoughts straight. He put his hand to head and asked his energy ball to cure it. But then he felt something different than expected happen. Instead of power flowing from his hand, he felt warmth flooding his head from his very center. He wondered what happened as his head cleared from the pain. He got into his power vision as he decided to call it. He saw the tendril and scar were gone and now layers of power, which were connected to his energy ball, protected his mind. Even the energy ball was looking bigger and stronger. Harry was very pleased with this and sent a heartfelt thank you to the ball, which pulsed once as if in acceptance. Harry smiled and came out of this vision. He looked down at himself and saw that he was covered in blood. He scowled at it and vanished the blood. He read a mirror and was pleasantly surprised to find that he accomplished it much easier than before. Either he was getting really good at it, which he didn't think changed that much since yesterday, or his power was responding to him much easier. He wondered if it was because of the thing in his scar being gone or because his mind had a permanent link to his energy ball. He shrugged. Whatever it was brilliant. He looked at his scar in the mirror and smiled. Where before it was a prominent scar, now it was a thin, almost invisible lightning-shaped scar. He frowned, as he felt something else in his mind. His power is pushing something for him to see. He closed his eyes and brought it up to see a short memory of who could only be his parents holding him as a baby. Unknown to him, he started crying. He asked his power to give him another memory, but he got a vision of his power destroying the scar and fighting it over his mind. He understood then that most of his earlier memories were destroyed during the fight, and his power saved the earliest possible memory it could, the day he was born. He thanked it again. His power did exactly what he asked it to do. He loved it. It was the greatest power in the world. He wiped his eyes of the tears and created a photograph of his parents with him from the memory. He wondered how he could store it. He remembered seeing a present Aunt Petunia gave Dudley for his birthday this year. It was a chain with a locket on it. The locket had Aunt Petunia's and Uncle Vernon's photos in it. Harry scrunched up his face as he concentrated on what he wanted exactly. He created a simple steel chain with a square locket on it. He shrunk the photo he created to fit the locket and placed it within. He put the chain around his neck and put a spell around it so that no one can see it except him. He looked at the small timepiece and saw it was about time to get up and cook breakfast. Just as the Dursleys and Harry finished breakfast, the doorbell rang. "Get it, boy," said Uncle Vernon. Harry opened the door to see Jess standing outside. She smiled at him and whispered, "Play along." "Who is it, boy?" bellowed Uncle Vernon from inside. Jess stepped inside. "It's me, Mr. Dursley. Jessica Smith from the library." "Oh, hi Ms. Smith, what can we do for you?" Aunt Petunia asked in a false cheery voice. "Do you need Harry again?" "Oh." Jess wanted to strangle that woman right then and there. But for Harry's sake she put on her best game face. "Yes please. My fiancé had an accident recently and is still recuperating. The doctors suggested a change of scenery and we decided to go on a holiday to France. I would be spending most of my time taking care of Mike and I can use some help." Petunia grimaced, seeing that Jess hurried. "Of course I would be paying for his time. How about £150 for the 2 weeks? Harry scowled at Jess back like he didn't really want to go, but inwardly he was jumping in joy. Vernon's greedy eyes lit up. "That's a generous offer, Ms. Smith. We were planning on going to a vacation ourselves. My sister invited us to the Caribbean and unfortunately she had only 3 tickets left. We were planning on leaving Harry with Mrs. Fig. If you can keep him an extra week until we come back, I think we can have a deal." "I don't see a problem, Mr. Dursley. Can you give me Harry's birth certificate so that I can get his passport? I will bear the costs as well. I really appreciate your help. We plan on leaving in 3 days." Vernon gave Petunia a nod and she reluctantly gave the birth certificate to Jess. Jess turned to Harry, who was still scowling at her. She raised an eyebrow at him and gave him the tiniest of winks. Harry, can you please take me to your bedroom so I can see what kind of clothes you have? Vernon and Petunia blanched. That's no good. That's not necessary, Ms. Smith. I'll make sure he's packed adequately. If you are sure, Mr. Dursley. Seeing their eager nods, she gave them a nod and left. After the door closed, Vernon rounded on Harry. Boy, take all your stuff from the cupboard and put them in Dudley's second bedroom. Now that you are earning your keep, we decided that you should have it. Harry happily put his clothes and other stuff in his new bedroom. Dudley protested and threw a tantrum. But Aunt Petunia promised to get him a new video game and he accepted the offer reluctantly. Soon after settling down in his new bedroom, Harry put a forget-me on the door and teleported just outside Jess' apartment. He made a mistake of teleporting directly into the apartment. N.T. Wunson was witness to some close intimacy from Jess and Mike. Thankfully they didn't see him as, like always, he had a forget-me on him. He used Mike's idea to successfully combine some of his skills. He had to convey the idea of combining these skills to his energy ball. It was difficult for Harry to explain the idea in a way the ball would understand. A plus sign didn't work. So he tried showing with it images of what he wanted to get done. It took a few hours to get the first idea across to the ball. But after that it was significantly easy to implement new ideas. He was happy that his energy ball seemed to be learning every time he taught it something. Now whenever he teleported he automatically had a forget-me on him. As soon as Jess opened the door, Harry flung himself at her and gave her a fierce hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jess laughed and pulled him inside. Don't mention it, Harry. So is this the birthday gift you and Mike planned? She ruffled his hair. Just one of them. You will have to wait until tomorrow for the others. Oh, I can't wait to go to France. Mike walked in from the bedroom at that moment carrying the passport application. Hey Harry, you ready for the trip? Harry nodded eagerly. You won't believe what happened after Jess left. The Dursleys gave me Dudley's second bedroom. They said I am earning my keep. I bet they were afraid Jess would see where I was sleeping. Jess gave a stern nod. Good. I was hoping something like that would happen. I can't stay for more than a few minutes. I need to help make lunch. Jess scowled but didn't comment. In her opinion Harry was still a little thin. But he didn't look like the malnourished and small kid he was the first time she saw him. In the 1 year she knew him, he grew a few inches and filled up a little. She made sure that he had ample healthy food with him all the time. On her suggestion he had worked on creating a small cardboard box, which would preserve food. So whenever Jess gave him a packet of healthy home-cooked food, he would shrink it and put it in the box. The next day Harry made breakfast for his family. They, like always, didn't even acknowledge his birthday. But every year he was allowed the rest of the day off without any chores. So as soon as he finished breakfast, Harry ran outside to a nearby alley and teleported to his second home. When Jess opened the door, he was surprised to see her wearing a party hat. She smiled and opened the door wide and Harry saw the entire living room decorated with party wrappers and there was a huge sign saying, "Happy Birthday Harry Potter." Harry was stunned at first and then Jess gave him a hug. Happy birthday, Harry. Harry couldn't help the emotions that welled up inside him. This was the first time anyone wished him a birthday. Thanks, Jess. This is great, he said in a soft voice. Mike came in with the birthday cake and Harry laughed on seeing him wearing an apron. Soon he blew out the candles and made his first ever birthday wish to a real cake. Then both Jess and Mike gave him a few presents. Most were clothes and shoes. Then, Mike gave him an envelope. Harry opened it curiously. It was a letter, accepting him into a martial arts school in London starting the first week of September. I thought it would help with your superpower stuff. Harry grinned and nodded. Then he remembered what happened a couple of days ago. I have so much to tell you. Then he told them about his scar, showed them how it was nothing but a thin line now and also showed his parents' photo. Both the adults agreed that the people in the photo could only be Harry's parents as he looked much like them. Jess scolded him. Don't ever do something like that again, Harry. At least not without telling us first. What if something happened to you? Harry ducked his head feeling a little shameful. Mike decided to help the boy out. So you were saying there was something in your scar that was sucking your power and you destroyed it? Harry nodded. But how did it get there? That's not the kind of scar you get in a car crash. And what about that green light and the laughter you said you heard? Harry shrugged. I have no idea. The Dursleys said that's how I got the scar. They could be lying. But why would they? No one could come up with an answer for that. Mike raised another issue. You know I have been working on a screenplay for a movie, right? So one of the books I read was Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It had great insight into the different phases of a hero and what it means to be one. But what got me was that every time there was a hero, who was ordinary or extraordinary with superpowers, he had a villain who was equally stronger if not more. So why do we think that Harry here is the only one with superpowers? Maybe it was a supervillain who gave him that scar. Huh, you really think so? I never thought about it like that, confessed Harry. Jess nodded. Mike's right. Abe, there are people out there with powers like yours, Harry. Maybe like you they stay hidden. They left the topic at that point but not before deciding to keep a lookout for others. That was really the only thing they could do. Soon it was time for his first ever vacation, which also meant his first time on an airplane. To say the least, Harry was excited. If not for Jess, he would be spending his time with Mrs. Fig. Though she was a good woman and gave him enough food, she always talked about her cats and that drove him crazy. She in fact stopped him the other day and asked if he would be staying with her like he always did when the Dursleys went to vacation. Harry told her he was going on a vacation as well and that he would be back in 3 weeks. For a second Harry thought she frowned at him. Then she smiled and wished him a happy vacation and to be safe. Harry enjoyed his first flight in the airplane. He couldn't wait to get into the air outside and fly himself. He had been working with Mike and Jess for nearly 2 months to get that skill right. They agreed that he was doing great. He tried many things on their suggestions. He observed that whenever he tried to rise higher from the ground, more of his power was consumed. He thought about it long and hard with the 2 adults and they decided that he could use better visuals to give the right intent to his energy ball. So after many failures, instead of his power expanding from his feet to the ground, a bright green halo of power surrounded his legs up to his knees and his hands up to his elbows. After that it became much easier to control his flight and he used much less power to fly. He couldn't explain it, but he felt like he had much lighter body mass. He also worked on making his power invisible instead of howling the green halo whenever he was using it. If one were to look closely, they could see a slight shift in air around his legs and arms. Jess and Mike promised that they would take him to his school grounds after they come back from vacation and he could fly to his heart's content within the grounds. Harry enjoyed his first vacation. Their first trip was to Paris and they stayed at the Plaza Hotel. Mike got a huge settlement for the accident and he decided to put that money to good use to enjoy the vacation and especially treat Harry to some good things in life. Harry stared at Parisian streets and buildings in awe. He was blown away by the Eiffel Tower and he loved staying at the plaza. He called it a palace. He was impressed by the art collection in the Louvre, though sometimes he spotted a couple of weirdly dressed people walking alone in a section. He didn't bother with these sections as Jess and Mike didn't seem interested in them. They later on visited the French Riviera and Harry got his first close-up at the ocean. They spent a couple of days enjoying the beach, before visiting other historic French cities. Against his protests they took him on a mega shopping trip, where they loaded him with some fashionable wear, cool electronics and even a couple of eyeglasses, which were photo something. They got darker in the sun and stayed normal in the shade. He liked them. But soon, like all vacations, it came to an end and they flew back to London and then to Surrey. Harry still had about 3 weeks left before school started and another 8 Dursley-free days to enjoy. After they came back, Jess and Mike took Harry to his school grounds. Harry put a forget-me on all 3 of them so that no one can see them. He also worked on how to make each of them notice the other 2. He did that by creating a link between the 3 of them. Then, he teleported them directly to the school ground to bypass all the locked doors. "Okay, Harry, I know this is exciting," said Jess sternly. "But you also need to be careful. If you feel that there is even a small possibility of you falling down, I want you back on the ground immediately." "I will. I promise," Harry answered immediately. This was something he had been waiting for a long time. And don't go too high and stay within the ground perimeter. Harry accepted quickly. The two adults took a few steps back toward the stand. Mike wanted to bring a camera to take some snaps, but when they tried it as a test at home, they saw that the forget-me was blocking any pictures and the place where Harry was supposed to be was overexposed. They weren't able to figure out how to make it work, yet. Harry closed his eyes, bubbling with excitement. He bent his legs and kicked off with all his strength. Woo-hoo! He screamed in joy as he raced into the air. He was made to fly. It felt so natural to him. He couldn't help the bubbling laugh that escaped him. The many hours of practice he put into flying at Jess' home paid off finally. Now everything was so instinctual. He slowed down to a stop at about 100 feet in the air. Then he twisted his body and raced toward the Mike and Jess at breakneck speed. A few feet before he hit them, he veered of and circled them, raising up a dust storm, before coming to stop in front of them, still floating in the air. "This is the best," he exclaimed. That was when he saw Jess holding on to Mike's arm painfully. She was pale with fright. Mike was just shocked to see the speed at which Harry did that aerial acrobatic. But seeing Harry enjoy it so much brought a smile onto his face. "Harry, just slow down a little." "Okay?" asked Jess in a shaky voice. Harry laughed. "Come on, Jess. This is so good. I never felt like this before." "How's your energy level, Harry?" asked Mike. Harry closed his eyes for half a second before he answered. "Pretty good. I can keep going for a while. The distance or height doesn't matter, but it felt like the faster I go, the more energy it takes." So Harry worked on his flying skills for the rest of his summer vacation. For the first few days Jess and Mike accompanied him. After that, they let him go on his own, but not before he promised not to go beyond the school ground and not to fly for more than an hour. He also ended up creating a shield around his eyeglasses to prevent exposure to air at high speeds. The first time he did that, his eyes became dry very fast. That's when he realized oxygen wasn't going in through the shield and redesigned it to let it in. That shield became an automatic part of his flying skill. And by the time school started, he practically owned the sky. Mike timed him one time and he could go from the ground level to 300 feet in 7 seconds. It was exhilaration like none other. But the faster he went, the more energy he consumed. But he also noticed that when he first started flying in the school, he could probably fly at top speed for 10 minutes before he tired out. But by the time school started about 3 weeks later, he was able to do it for 15 minutes. It clearly showed him that the longer he worked on his energy, the more it would grow. It's like a muscle. Sometimes he would simply stay up in the air and look at the city below him. It was such a cool sight. He also worked on teleporting while he was flying or floating in the air. It was one of his combination skills. He made sure that if he teleported while he was in the air, he would come out with the ability to still stay in the air. He tried it a few times at Mike's home even before he started flying in school. It was Jess' idea and it was a brilliant one. He also learned an important fact of physics the first few times he tried. If he teleported while he was flying, he would appear with the same flying velocity he was in when he disappeared. No matter how much he tried, he wasn't able to teleport into a stop. It was the same the other way round. He wouldn't come out flying if he teleported while he was just floating. 1A. Amusing and potentially dangerous situation happened a couple of days before school started. Harry was simply floating in the air, when he felt something hit him in the back of his head with a thwack. He heard a bird screech indignantly and turned around to see an owl flapping its wings in his face. He floated away from the crazy bird, when the bird ruffled its feathers, gave him a piercing gaze and flew away. The one thing that struck him as odd was that the bird had some kind of letter rolled up and tied to its legs. Harry asked Mike and Jess if people used owls to deliver letters and he laughed at until he told them what happened. They just shrugged and told him they never saw that happen before. Pigeons, yes. Owls, no. That incident also brought the end of his high-flying adventures. That is until he could figure out a way to avoid birds and other flying projectiles. The Dursleys weren't too pleased to see all the new stuff Harry got. It wasn't possible for Harry to hide everything from them. There were simply too many for him to remember at all times. But when they realized that he didn't buy it with the 150 pounds Jess promised them, they let him keep them with a warning that he's going to work for that nice Ms. Smith for the rest of the school year. Harry couldn't be happier. He also put a permanent forget-me on the door to room. It would do no good for his relatives to see the true extent of the stuff he had in his room. The fourth year of the school started well for Harry. Dudley and Piers were still at odds with each other. The bullying in the school had dropped down significantly and no one knew the reason why. Harry even had people talking to him now that he was more smartly dressed in designer wear that fit him. But these were the same people who rejected him because he wore ill-fitting clothes, and Dudley bullied him and any others that talked to him. So he wasn't able to form any lasting friendships. He was friendly with them and played with them during recess. But that was the limit he would take it with these children. The start of the academic year also signaled the start of his martial arts classes. This particular center taught many styles. But the style that Harry was interested in was Jeet Kune Do. Sifu Tong, a genuine martial artist who won many international competitions, taught it. This center only had small classes of 5 people at the most. Harry joined the beginners class where he was the second youngest student, the youngest being a 6-year-old girl. There were 8 levels and it would take years of practice and dedication to reach the final level. In the first class, 2 students in the 6th level had an exhibition match for the benefit of all the lower levels, especially the new students. Harry was very impressed by the speed with which they reacted. He had to agree that this could only help with his superhero career. Sifu Tong taught many students over the 20 years since he opened his studio. Unlike many masters, He always taught the first level class as it was the foundation on which greatness can be achieved. To him, martial arts was not just fighting, but a way of life. To dedicate oneself to understand the inner self. To feel the energy flowing within you and around you, to use it become a better person, that was martial arts. The side benefit was the fighting skill one develops to protect and defend. Few people could understand this truth. So Sifu Tong liked working with young kids and teach them to meditate as a first step in the long process to enlightenment. So when he asked his young students if they ever meditated, he was reasonably surprised to see 8-year-old Harry Potter raise his hand. He asked Harry to step into the middle and show them. Harry sat in middle of the small circle of students and got into his power vision. He didn't pull up any tendrils to his limbs, but just gazed at his energy ball, basking in its power. Sifu Tong was visibly impressed with the young boy. To test him, he got into stance before the boy and released a punch directed at his nose, but stopping a couple of inches before he hit it. Harry had no visible reaction. The master gave a nod and placed and on Harry's shoulder, shaking him from his trance. "Well done, Mr. Potter. You have done this before. For the last 1 year, Sifu. Good, you can go back to your seat. What you saw is the level of meditation I hope everyone can achieve. You will all practice that for the first 15 minutes. Then and only then we will work on your stance. Now to start your meditation, think of just one thing alone that you are very familiar with. It could be a pen, a shoe, or even the face of a person. Now once you have that picture in mind, get to know it. Every nick on a pencil, every blemish on a face, know them all." As every student got into position, Sifu Tong stepped toward Harry. "You have surpassed that level, Mr. Potter. I want you to work on the next step. Even while meditating, it is necessary for you to be conscious of the world around you. Do not think of the world, but feel it. Extend your subconscious around you and you will know things without knowing." Harry nodded hesitantly. He understood most of what Sifu said until he talked about subconscious and knowing without knowing. He got into his power vision. Sifu said to extend his subconscious. But what is that? He didn't know. But he tried to extend himself, trying to feel what was around him. It wasn't until he talked to Jess later at her home that she explained what subconscious was. The next day she even gave him a bouquet that explained the many workings of the human mind. There were many words and concepts that Harry didn't understand and needed either Jess or Mike to help further explain them. But it was only at the end of October that he made the breakthrough. It was Mike who suggested that Harry develop a skill similar to that of radar in order to solve object problem when he was flying. He explained to Harry what it is and how it works. He even bought an action movie, which had many scenes with radar. Combine that with a shield he had been working on will provide him with enough protection while he was flying. It was then Harry made the connection with what Sifu Tong asked him to do in the radar. Both were similar. But instead of extending his subconscious, Harry extended his power. As a first step, he asked his energy ball to extend the power outside. He gave it a visual of him standing in the center as his power expanded all around him in a circle. A few tries and a shorted alarm clock after, he was successful in doing that. It was taxing to not only expend that much energy but to keep it going constrained within the radius he wanted. Needless to say, the first few times he tried it, he was extremely tired. After a couple of weeks of doing that and teaching his energy ball to only expend the least amount needed for the task and to keep it at the constant radium of 5 feet from him, he was ready for the next step. To give the power that was around him purpose. He wanted to know what was happening around him. So he asked his energy ball to tell him about the world. He gave it visuals for the different senses. Vision, audition, touch, smell. He wanted to know everything that was happening around him. The first time he did that, he fainted. He woke up an hour later with a massive headache. It was then he realized his mistake. His mind wasn't used to that kind of information overload from his various senses. So he reduced the radius to surround his immediate body and asked for one sense at a time. What he felt was indescribable. He could perceive his physical self like he never did before. He could literally feel the hair moving on his arms from the silent air in the room. He could hear his heart beating at a regular speed. He could smell the sweat on his forehead. And he could see himself, truly see himself with his core at the center burning with an ethereal fire. Then, he started working on tuning the senses at his will. He learned it the hard way that having a heightened sense of touch when punching a bag was not a good idea. Sifu Tong was needless to say very impressed when Harry blocked his punch. With his eyes closed in a meditative state, Harry opened his eyes wide on contact. He didn't expect the punch from Sifu. It was his instincts, which made him block it. He was in the power vision as usual and was observing his own body through his heightened senses when sensed something shift in front of him and his hand automatically went up to block whatever it was. Sifu smiled at him. Well done, Harry. Mike was very pleased when he got a call from Sifu telling him of Harry's excellent progress and that he was moving to a more advanced class. Harry also spent every weekend working on his flying. He also experimented on creating a shield similar to the Force shield he saw in Star Wars. It would be something similar to what he had around his eyes, but it will cover his entire body. Removing the need for the eye shield. The shield was transparent, would allow oxygen in and will protect him against anything physical. It wasn't until a crow crashed into his shield and nearly died, Harry healed it in the nick of time, that he realized that he would need to add another effect to his flying skill. So after months of working he created the perfect design for his flying. Every time he flew, he would have the basic flying effect, which allowed him to fly, a forget-me, which made him invisible to everyone except those he allowed to see, a body-hugging shield, which protected him against all physical objects, a divergence field, which makes living creatures move around the field, a temperature field, which kept the temperature at a comfortable level. And then finally a 10-foot visual radar, which allowed him to identify objects around him. Because it was tiring to maintain all these spells at the same time, it took him a while to combine them under a single skill. Though it did cut his safe flying time by 80%. The end of November brought wonderful news that Jess was pregnant. When Harry heard the news he froze for a second, before he smiled and hugged Jess. Congrats guys. He looked uncertain for a moment. So will I be a brother? He asked in low hopeful voice. Jess laughed and kissed his head. Of course Harry. And you will make a great big brother. Harry's heart soared in joy. He always wanted a sibling of his own. They also told him that they would be getting married on December 28 of that year and he would be their ring bearer. Harry argued extensively but finally agreed to their demands that he will train only in the school grounds, until he is back to his original safe flight time of 3 hours. Christmas of 1989 was a very busy time for Harry. As not only are his informal guardians getting married, they are also moving into a new house in London proper, which Mike bought with the leftover money he had from the accident. Harry enjoyed the look the couple had, when they came home on the last night in that apartment, to see all their furniture, shrunk and packed into a tiny box. The last couple of days before the wedding would be spent in a hotel, after which, they would be taking off on a honeymoon cruise. Jess being an orphan and only child, she didn't have any direct relations and Mike's dad, Rob Newell, gave her away at the wedding. Harry enjoyed being the ring bearer. Many people inquired on whom he was and the couple answered back saying he was their adoptive son. Harry knew that was going to be their answer, as they discussed it before the wedding. But he still couldn't help feel the joy every time they said it. After nearly 8 years without any love, Harry thought he was extremely lucky to find someone like Jess and Mike. He made a vow that day, that once he was an adult he will always help those kids who were in similar situation like him. Mike's parents didn't know the whole truth about Harry. They only knew that he was somehow involved in the miracle that saved their son's life and they were thankful for that. The newlyweds came from their honeymoon to see all their stuff from the old place unpacked and already set up as they envisioned it. Hearing the door open, Harry ran down the stairs. "You're back. Happy New Year." He quickly gave them a hug and pulled them inside. "Harry, why did you do all this without us? We could have helped you. And Happy New Year to you as well. I wanted to surprise you guys. It wasn't much anyway. I didn't even feel a thing. It was true. See, compared to last year his energy ball is not only brighter but much larger as well. Come on, I want to show you something." He pulled both of them up the stairs to the second story, which housed 4 bedrooms. A master bedroom, a bathroom, 2 bedrooms fit for children and 1 guest bedroom. The first floor housed a formal dining room, a kitchen, a living room, a bathroom and 2 more guest bedrooms. It was a large house and it even came with a big backyard and a 2-car garage. Harry pulled them into the master bedroom, which had a connected bathroom and also a den, which was now decorated into a baby's room, with a crib and many toys. "I asked Rob for a list baby toys and created all these in the crib," he said proudly with a smile. The Newells were stunned. They stared at the baby room in wonder. Even after all this time, they were still surprised by what Harry could do with his power. All they could do was hug him. "Thanks Harry. This is great. The baby will love this." Harry teleported to a tree near number 4 just like he did every day and after making sure no one's watching removed the forget-me on him. He was in a happy mood. He won his first tournament and was moving to the 3rd level and not even the sour faces of his aunt and uncle could turn down his mood. He had to come home early, as his aunt wanted his help cooking dinner. Uncle Vernon was having someone over for dinner and she wanted to cook something special. Harry really didn't mind it. He hardly spent time with them anyways, much to his and the Dursleys' liking. Harry went into his room after cooking and having a meager meal. He snickered to himself thinking the Dursleys thought they were still denying him food. He is in very good shape for a 9-year-old. He picked one of Jess' meals he stored in his self-styled refrigerator and enjoyed it in leisure. He glanced at the room, which had been nearly empty for the past few months. Most of his important stuff, he stored in his own room at his second home. The only thing still left here were the basic enmities in the food box. He loved spending time at his second home. Jess was 6 months pregnant and doing well. Mike and Jess would have dinner together and discuss the day. Mike would often tell him of any news ideas he might develop with his power. It was what Harry imagined his family would have been like if his mom and dad were alive. Harry stepped out of his room to get some water from the bathroom, when he heard the TV blaring with sirens. He stepped down light-footed and tentative. He could only see a tiny part of TV from the middle of the stairs and he could see that his relatives and their guests were gathered around the TV. He put on a forget-me and quickly walked down to the living room. It was a blazing fire that covered a 20-story building. There were many fire engines with their ladders stretched out, as the firemen tried to rescue the inhabitants. "As you can see," shouted a reporter from the scene, "the firemen are trying to contain the fire and rescue the residents stuck inside. We do not know how many are still left." This was it, thought Harry. He knew he would not be keeping his promise to Mike and Jess, but this is bigger than that promise. He teleported to his bedroom with a soft pop, startling the other occupants in the living room. He put on a cap over his head and floated up in the air. He teleported above Mike and Jess' new home in London. As he knew the fire was somewhere in the city, he flew up in the air until he was a few hundred meters high. He saw the blazing fire to the north and teleported in that direction. He flew the last remaining distance to the building and floated outside. Even through his temperature-controlled field, he could feel the heat radiating from the burning building. It was a 2-1-story building and the fire was spreading top down starting with the 18th floor. It already converged on the 10th floor and was spreading fast. It was a terrible sight to behold. Harry couldn't teleport into the building, as he had never been in there. He flew around the building until he found a blackened window on the 8th floor with no one nearby. Steeling himself, he flew through the window, shattering the glass but was protected from it by his shield. His radar, which after several months of practice was up to 17 feet, told him as he flew around that there were no living beings on this floor but 11 on the upper floor. So he flew up the stairs to see 11 firemen spraying water on the ceiling, trying to put out the fire, which was spreading down. Seeing as they had this in control for now, Harry went to the next floor. The fire surrounded his shield. He could hardly see anything. He flew through it to the nearest living being his radar pointed. He saw a burned fireman lying on the floor with a beam lying on top of him. Harry floated the heavy beam and threw it off the man. He quickly released a bout of power into the man, asking his energy ball to cure him. He picked up the downed man and teleported outside, where there were many ambulances, and left the fireman among the patients waiting to be treated. He teleported back to the spot where he found the fireman and went in search for other people. He found 3 other people alive, if just barely, and took them to safety, but not before releasing a bout of curing power into them. He went floor to floor looking for any other living people. He found only 2 more alive and took them to the ambulance. By then, a crowd was gathering, wondering where the new patients were coming from. Harry wasn't bothered with it, as he had his Forget-Me protecting him from anyone's notice. He saw the fire quickly spreading to the topmost floors and flew up there. He saw through the only clear glass windows in the building that there were more than 24 people, mostly dressed in party wear and some in nightwear, and they were panicking. He ported inside and caught hold of a woman who was hugging her child, huddling in a corner away from the panicking crowd. He ported them to the ground near the ambulance, when someone in the crowd saw the mother and child appearing from nowhere and screamed. Leaving the stunned mother and child who were looking around wondering what happened, Harry ported back to the top floor. He proceeded to port the people out of the floor 2 at a time. He knew he was overdoing it and he was tiring out. But he couldn't stop now. Not when these people could die. When he ported the last person out, he stumbled away from the scene, which has TV cameras pointed at the area where the people suddenly started appearing. He sat down on the ground, tired. He brought down his powers so that he can lessen the stress on his energy, only keeping the Forget-Me active. That was when he heard the scream. He had long since fine-tuned his super sensory system and got used to filtering and using the information it provided. The scream came from inside the building. That he was sure. He ported back to the 21st floor, not wanting to fly anymore. He heard the scream again. It was woman shouting for help. He honed in on the scream. It was coming from the 20th floor. He cursed himself for skipping this floor, as he thought everyone in the floors above the 18th would have already gone onto the topmost floor. He ran down the stairs and listened for the scream. She was in one of the houses at the other end of the building, and the fire was spreading quite fast. He shielded himself from the fire and ran to the house. He channeled his power to his leg and kicked the door from its frame. He brought up his hands and another shield sprung in front of him, saving him from the fire that tried to envelope him. As he stepped inside through the fire, he saw a man fighting the growing flames with a wet blanket. He stared around widely at who crashed the door. "Who is it? Who is there?" he asked in a panicked voice. "I am here to save you." "Where's the woman?" shouted Harry. "In the bathroom." "Please hurry," answered He-Man as he beat down on a flame that tried to engulf his leg. Harry ran inside the house to where his senses told him the woman was. Harry pulled the door open to see a dripping woman pouring water on her 3-year-old crying son. As she consoled him. As Harry took hold of her, she panicked and tried to get away, waving her hands wildly. She knocked his glasses away from his face. Harry stumbled away from her. "Ma'am, I am trying to save you," gasped Harry as he got his bearings back. He knew there was no use looking for his glasses as he heard them break. He reached for the blurry shapes of the woman and the child, and before the woman can panic again, he ported them outside to safety. He stumbled as he started to get dizzy from the smoke he inhaled. The woman looked around, panicked, and pleaded with a fireman standing nearby. "Please, my husband is still there. You must save him, please, I beg of you." Harry shook his head to clear it. He knew he wouldn't be able to see the man without his glasses. He closed his eyes and asked his energy ball, which was smaller, to help with his eyes. He gave it quick visuals of wanting to see things clearly. His energy ball understood and pushed the power into Harry's eyes. Harry yelped as a sudden pain shot from his eyes. But after a few seconds, it quickly died down. Harry opened his eyes and took a step back in surprise. What he got wasn't a normal vision like he saw through his glasses, and it wasn't like the radar vision he got in his mind. If he had to compare it with anything, it was similar to the way he perceived himself visually. When he first asked his power to extend around his body. The air glowed with a faint white color. The ground had multiple colors flowing in it and the people all shone with different colors, though not as brightly as he did even in his exhausted state. He didn't understand what was happening and he didn't have the time to at that moment as he heard the wife plead with the fireman again. He ported back into the house and saw the husband collapsed as fire burned through him. He saw a very faint light coming from him. He ran forward and shielded himself and the man from the raging fire. He caught the man's burned hand and ported them back to the ground. He saw that the light was almost gone from the man. He kneeled in front of him and pushed his hands on the man's chest and released as much power as he could. The power flowed into the man and as the crowd looked stunned the man pulsed with a faint green light. Harry waited for his power to work, but it was of no use as the last of the light left the man. No, 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 mumbled Harry to himself. He sent another jolt of power into the man with no luck. And then another with tears rolling from his eyes. But the light never came back into the man and Harry knew he died. He felt someone place a hand on his shaking shoulder and looked up to see a police officer standing behind him. Son, he's gone. Let go of him now. Harry looked around and saw that everyone was staring at him in wonder. Harry wondered what happened to his forget-me. As he looked into himself, he realized his energy ball took saving the man's life as a priority and said any and all energy it could find without making him unconscious. Harry only had a very faint forget-me, which was not enough to deter human vision. The officer kneeled in front of the 9-year-old boy. What's your name, son? And did you save all these people? Harry scrambled away from the police officer and blasted a quick forget-me on himself. The officer looked around confused, shook his head and looked back at Harry. There's nothing to fear, son, assured the officer. I just want to ask you some questions. Harry couldn't understand why the forget-me wasn't working. He quickly teleported out of there. Hey, where did he go? Shouted an excited reporter from the Times. Did you see that? He just disappeared. He turned to his camera operator. Tell me you got that. The camera operator just gave him a thumbs up with a smile. Harry ported directly into his room at number 4 and collapsed onto the bed. He hugged the pillow and sobbed. He felt terrible. This was his first hero mission and he failed. The man died in his arms. Officer Montgomery stared at his 6-year-old daughter who was sleeping peacefully in her bed. He loved her dearly and wished she would always be this innocent. But he knew sooner or later she would see the world in all its beauty and ugliness. He just wished he would still be there for her when that happened. He just put her to bed after reading her a story. It was a story of a young hero who saved many lives just the other day and captured the interest of the nation, if not the entire world. He saw with his own eyes as a young boy, who couldn't be more than 10 years old, save 42 people. Many of whom would have died in that fire if not for him. And then he just disappeared. Unfortunately, or as he'd like to think fortunately, the TV or the still cameras couldn't catch him. All they got was an overexposed smudge where the boy should have been. This though only added to the mystery and increased the interest the world had on the young hero. Through the many eye accounts the people at that incident were able to describe the boy to the TV cameras. He himself was asked what he saw as he was the only one close enough to place a hand on the boy's shoulder and ask him a question. He answered that he couldn't see the boy's face clearly as a cap was covering it mostly and he looked like any ordinary Caucasian boy. That of course was far from the truth. He also saw a few black hair licks sticking out of the boy's cap and then the boy's eyes and they were glowing a gentle white. He never told any of his friends or family, but he knew of a world hidden in plain sight. It was a world made of powerful people who called themselves wizards and witches. His father told him many stories of this world while he was growing up and when he was 11 years old took him to see the magical alley, whose name he couldn't remember. It was a wonderful experience for the young boy, that was, until he saw the ugly side of that world. Of hate and bigotry for Eve. Ryon else than those who were of magic or magical blood. He hated these wizards and witches. He didn't hate them for their magical powers, but for being so short-sighted, selfish and for their superiority complex. He was not a hateful man. He knew realistically there would be wizards and witches who were not hateful, but he only met those who showed hate or at best indifference. He followed his dad and became an officer of the law. To protect and defend those who couldn't fight for themselves. He served for over 8 years in the department and he hoped in the process saved a few lives and helped make the streets safer. But when he realized that it was a young boy, who could only be a wizard, who risked his life to save all those people, he felt ashamed for thinking the worst of that world. Maybe he just didn't see the good in that world and assumed the worst. He prayed wherever that boy was he was safe. He wished that one day he could meet the young hero and thank him for what he did. Not just for saving those people, but for also giving him hope that the hidden world was not all bad. That he doesn't need to be afraid of sending his only daughter, who performed what his father called accidental magic, to that world when the time comes. Arthur Weasley was a mild man with a good sense of humor. He loved his 7 children and his wife. He was also crazy for everything Muggle. He was fascinated by that world and wished to learn as much as he could. So he was ecstatic when he was transferred from the Accidental Magic Reversal Squad to the Misuse of Artifacts office. He only had Lumberton, a fellow a dozen years younger to him, to assist with the office. What very few people knew was, this office not only dealt with finding and destroying cursed Muggle objects but also was responsible for finding out any mentions of strange occurrences in the Muggle world. Then the Obliviators would be notified and the memories of those people wiped. Most of the time it was pretty slow in the office and give Arthur all the time he needed to tinker with new Muggle stuff. So he was surprised when Lumberton rushed into the office looking pale. He was carrying the Muggle newspapers in his arm and sweating from probably his run up to the office. "What's got into you, Lumberton?" The thin fellow with acne-covered face just threw the papers on Arthur's desk. He huffed as he tried to catch his breath. "Just read the papers, Arthur." The red-headed man raised an eyebrow and picked up the Times to see what rattled his fellow worker. "Oh Merlin, this is not good. How could this happen? What happened to the detectors? Why didn't anyone know that magic was being performed?" He took the paper and ran out of the door toward the DMLE. He charged into the law enforcement department and paused at a desk where a grumpy-looking wizard dressed in the traditional Aurors uniform was doing paperwork. "I need to see Amelia, urgently." The wizard looked up to give that demanding fellow an earful, when he faltered. Arthur Weasley was the head of a department, even if it was a small one. He gave him a quick nod. He got from his desk, knocked on a door and entered. Arthur fidgeted with the paper as he browsed through the contents quickly. "You can go in, Mr. Weasley," said the assistant. Amelia was surprised to see Arthur pale-faced. Not much rattled that man, and that fact alone concerned her. He gave her the paper. "It's all over the paper, Amelia. I don't think we have enough people to obliviate the whole country. I'm sure the news passed across the pond by now." The head of the DMLE read the paper in silence. "It says a 10-year-old boy saved all these people from a burning people. Some of them described exactly what apparition feels like for a first-timer." She screwed up her face in thought. It must be an adult under a glamour. Does explain why the cameras didn't work. But why didn't we detect the magic? Argued Arthur. Amelia Bones tapped her fingers as she thought about the answer. "We can't track apparition, but we should have picked up any wand magic that was done, and whoever it was clearly did at least the notice me not and shield spells." After a couple of minutes of thought she looked up at Arthur. "Thanks for bringing this to my notice, Arthur. I will assign Auror Shacklebolt to investigate further. Please work with and help him on the Muggle side." Arthur nodded. "Of course, Amelia." He hesitated, wanting to say something. Amelia smiled at him. "What is it, Arthur? We are colleagues here." Arthur smiled back and gave her a nod. "Whoever it was saved a lot of lives." Amelia nodded back in acceptance. "True, and that will be considered in the punishment. This is not a case of a few Muggles knowing about us, Arthur, but the whole country can. OWS that there's at least one person who with magic out there. How long before they know about our entire world?" Arthur Weasley sighed. I know, and if it was for any other reason other than saving those people I would agree with you readily, but, he left it unsaid. Prime Minister John Major was in a happy mood. A disaster was averted and many people were saved by an unlikely hero. He of course knew of the wizarding world as he was introduced to it on the second day of his term by the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge. He chuckled imagining how he might have looked. True, he was very skeptical even after a painting talked to him and a man stepped out of a fire that burned green. It took some convincing, including the minister performing some simple tricks with his wand. Soon he forgot about them, as he got involved with running the rest of the country. So he was surprised when he was notified by his secretary of the incredible incident. This kind of action needs to be appreciated in the person honored. He stood in front of the talking painting and coughed a couple of times. Excuse me, but can I talk to the Minister of Magic? It's rather important. The man with a silver wig and a frog-like face didn't respond for a few seconds. Then, he gave the PM a quick nod and walked out of the painting. Amazing, he muttered to himself. It was 15 minutes later that the Minister of Magic, a short pudgy man with a bowler hat, stepped through the fire with a smile. "Ah, Prime Minister, I was just notified of your request. What can I do for you?" The PM gave him a big smile and shook his hand. "Thanks for seeing me on such short notice, Minister. It was brought to my attention that someone with amazing powers saved a lot of people yesterday. I wanted to thank that wizard myself. Do you know who that was?" Fudge felt lost. He didn't know what the PM was talking about. "I say, dear chap, what are you talking about?" The PM then showed the paper to Fudge, who quickly lost the color he had on his face. "He's a hero, Minister. You didn't tell me children that young could perform such amazing feats." He patted the minister on the shoulder. "I envy you, Minister. Any society that can inspire such bravery in someone so young, must be a great society to govern." Seeing the minister nod, the PM chuckled in his mind. "Oh, he could play this man so easily. Wouldn't you say this hero must be rewarded? How about £100,000? What's that in new currency then?" 20,000 galleons, answered Fudge absently. He was lost in his thoughts. How could this have happened? "Excellent. So you find out who this boy is and we can have a private ceremony in this office." Fudge nodded again, and stepped into Fireplace's face burning with anger. He stepped in to his office and hollered to his assistant, "Get me Amelia Bones." Harry Potter was slumped in his chair. His eyes were dull and he looked grumpy. He was waiting for the bell to ring so that he could escape the confinements of the class and the children within. Everywhere he went, all everyone talked about was the Super Boy. Harry snorted slightly and cringed when the teacher gave him a stern look. Even the Dursleys, who hated anything abnormal, talked about him, even if it was criticized that he was only getting in the way of proper officials who could have done a better job. Harry agreed. Maybe if there was a better superhero, he could have saved that man's life. He rubbed his eyes to clear the slight ache in them. After he got back home and cried his heart out, he slept. When he woke up, here was a burning sensation in his eyes. He forgot to pull back the power from his eyes before he slept and they were aching with strain. They got better over the last couple of days, but there was still that tiny itching ache. He won't be pushing his power into them anytime soon. When the bell rang, he was one of the first to step out of the class and walk outside. He spotted Jess waiting with a scowl on her face. He hadn't seen her since that night couple of days ago. He couldn't show his face to her. He didn't want to see that disappointed look. As Harry stood before her, Jess tapped her foot, waiting. "So, got anything to say, Harry?" Harry stood there silent, sulking at his feet. Jess sighed and put a hand across his shoulder. "How are you, Harry? Mike and I were so worried. You didn't call or come to the home and we knew it was you when we heard the news." Harry still didn't answer. "Come on, let's go for a walk. The doctor says I need to get some exercise and God knows Mike's as lazy as they come." They silently walked to the nearby park. "So what happened, Harry?" asked Jess. Harry couldn't stop himself anymore and told her everything. "He died in my hands, Jess. I wish I could have saved him. I am a bad superhero." Quote. Jess ruffled his hair. "Oh Harry, don't say that. You saved so many lives that day. They would have all died if it wasn't for you. If anyone deserves to be called a hero, it's you. But, yes, that man died. But it wasn't your fault. You did all you could and no one could have asked for more. Even with all your powers, you simply can't save everyone, Harry. She took out a paper she was carrying and showed him the front page. It had photos of all 42 people Harry saved, and beside the photos, they thanked the boy for saving them in their own words. RRY focused on the wife who lost her husband, and she still thanked him for saving her and her son Thomas. I still wished I saved him. There is nothing wrong with that. But just remember, Harry, at the end you are still a 9-year-old and you cannot save the world. Yet, murmured Harry softly. What was that? Asked an amused Jess. Nothing. Harry refused to rise to the bait. Jess laughed. You know, we dropped by your relative's house on Sunday. I asked your aunt if I could talk to you about a change in your help schedule. She went up to call you and then came back down saying she needed to cook lunch. I knew you were behind a forget-me and left not wanting to cause a scene with your aunt. Harry scowled, remembering that spell. There's something wrong with forget-me. After those people saw me, it wouldn't work on them anymore. We'll figure it out. Now, why don't we walk to the library? Mike was supposed to pick me up 10 minutes ago and you can teleport to the house. That night after having dinner, the family of 3 sat down. So, Superboy, E.H.? Asked Mike, with an amused smile. Harry scowled at him. I hate that name. Mike laughed again and Jess pinched his arm. Ow. Okay, so why didn't the forget-me work? Harry shrugged. I know it was very weak when I was trying to save that man. But even when I increased the power on it, that officer just shook his head and continued looking at me. So did the rest. I don't know what went wrong. It always worked before. Mike and Jess thought about it for a while. Well, let's see if we can find out how forget-me exactly works. We know you are not turning invisible. What do you ask your energy ball, Harry? Harry frowned in thought. Make anyone looking for me forget me for that moment. Jess nodded. So the power doesn't affect you, but affects the people around you. The few times you tried it on me, I always kept thinking of something else to do at that moment. So it somehow affects our minds. Pitched in Mike. Makes sense. It pushes finding you to the back of a person's mind and makes it unimportant. Harry thought about it and nodded slowly. Okay, I got it. So the reason it didn't work was that these people wanted to find me so badly that it became very important to them. Jess smiled at him with pride. Always knew you were a smart boy. Yes, the power wasn't enough to make them forget something they considered so important. Harry gave her a smile. So next time I must try and become invisible, he said with conviction. The wife and husband glanced at each other. Mike sighed and looked at the young boy affectionately. You really are bent on becoming a superhero, aren't you? Harry gave him a serious nod and Mike laughed. Well, I can't really ask you to stop without being hypocrite. Cal, seeing as I was one of the persons you saved. So the next best thing to do would be to make sure you can survive what lies ahead of you. I don't want you to go after a mugger only to know you can't protect yourself from bullets. Over the next few weeks Mike, Jess and Harry made a list of all the skills Harry would need in his hero career. They divided the list into 5 parts. Offensive skills, defensive skills, concealment skills, transportation skills, and finally support. Why support? Because Harry, as Jess said, however powerful you are, you can't save the world by yourself. You need help, even if it was someone to give you ideas. You have transportation pretty much nailed down. As for concealment, the best thing for you to work on is becoming invisible for those times forget-me wouldn't work. Mike said as he wrote it down in the list. The only defensive skill you have is your power shield. But it's not infallible. Like with the fire incident, we know it will fail if you use too much of your power. So we need something that's not linked to your power and that can defend you. What? Like a real shield? Asked Harry. Exactly, agreed Mike. That's one thing he liked about Mike and Jess. They gave him ideas on how to improve, but let the how up to him. And then when he was done, they would give him critical feedback on how to further improve it. And so Harry started working on a physical shield. He didn't like the idea of covering himself completely with metal like Iron Man. It simply didn't feel right to him. He preferred a hand shield. And so he went to work designing it on paper. Not knowing it would be first of many products, which would revolutionize the world. For the material, he wanted something beautiful, powerful and strong, like the legendary metal mithril from Lord of the Rings. It wasn't until the end of June that he made a breakthrough. The whole Superboy issue died down to the back pages with no more sightings of Harry. The Wizarding world had no clue who he was, and they tried to subtly make the news muggles forget about the incident. Jess gave birth to a beautiful baby boy on June 25, 1990, who they named James after Harry's father. Harry was literally jumping with joy. He couldn't wait to go and see him after school. He was a big brother and he's going to spoil his little brother. But when he went to see the baby for the first time, he was surprised by what his sensory field told him. For many months now, he could feel the people around him, and for a lack of a better word, also feel their energies. He observed that children had more energy than adults, and the older they got, the less energy they had. So he was not surprised to sense more energy from little James than he did from the adults around him. But what surprised him was that little James also had that special feel only he ever felt within him. It was like a secondary energy on top of the primary energy. Harry's were very closely linked with each other, but not completely merged. So Harry could still feel the difference. When Harry wondered about how his own energy felt and looked, he remembered something he forgot for many months now. He wanted to kick high himself for forgetting that he could push power into his eyes. And so as the adults fussed over the just-born child, Harry asked his energy ball to slowly push the power into his eyes. And his energy ball, as always, obeyed and pushed it slowly. And when it reached a point where Harry could see the colors around him without tuning out the real world completely, Harry asked it to stop. Harry was ecstatic. He was right. Little James indeed had an energy ball just like him. It was small, but Harry knew it would only get bigger as little James got older. Because, unlike the primary energy, the secondary energy is getting stronger with time. He waited patiently until the doctor and the nurse left them. "What do you think, Harry? Like your little brother?" asked Mike as Jess cooed to the just-born. Harry jumped up down in joy. "He has the power too, this is so cool," rushed out Harry. Mike and Jess froze. "What do you mean he has the power?" Harry pointed to his eyes, which if someone observed closely were twinkling a little. "I could push my power into my eyes. I did that the first time when I lost my glasses during the fire. But I forgot about it." "What does that have to do with James having power?" whispered Mike. "You see, I could sense people around me for a while now. It's like I could feel their energies. But they were all different to mine. It was like I had a second energy. CH was very closely linked with my first energy, but still, different." Mike and Jess nodded slowly. "I felt the same with James. His second energy is not that closely linked and it's small. But I bet when he gets older it will be just like mine," said Harry with a laugh. Are you sure?" asked Jess with shocked wonder. Never in a million years did she think her baby would have the same wonderful powers like Harry. Harry nodded brightly. "Yep. When I pushed power into my eyes, I could see the world in colors. I think they are energies. Even the air has energy, though it's all over the place. Same with ground, trees, animals and humans. I could see the energies in you and Mike. And I can also see the dual energies in James. This is so cool." He leaned back and floated in the air in happy exhaustion. "Harry," hissed Mike. Harry looked up confused. "Oh, I put up a forget-me on the door." The adults nodded. Jess glanced at Mike with a smile. "We have two special boys, Mike." Mike sighed in mock tiredness. "And I can already feel the white hair they will give me." After that day Harry took every chance he got to look at the energies around him. It was simply brilliant. He was also confused to see a red bubble-like shield that surrounded number 4. He channeled power into his hands and reached for the red bubble, asking his energy ball to analyze it. It took a while, as this was a first experience for Harry and his energy ball with something like this. What Harry understood was that the intention of that bubble was to protect the house from all who meant them harm, and it was very powerful. Harry was shocked at first and wondered who put it there. Did he put it by accident? He simply didn't know. But he also got a wonderful idea and he asked his energy ball to understand everything about the red bubble shield. But now that he got an idea as to what the colors around him were, he wondered if he could use these colors to make the metal, because his own power wasn't enough to make a metal like mithril. He tried many times unsuccessfully. A few times he thought it worked, but at the end whatever he created turned to dust and then into nothing. A couple of times it led to complete exhaustion. which he was not a big fan of as it felt like he was trampled by a hippo. So one night when everyone slept, he crept out with a forget-me and went looking for a source of PoW where he could try and take the energy from. He didn't want to take the energy from the red bubble as it was meant for protection. And trying to take energy from the air wasn't such a huge success. He could take some, but it was really small. It was really spread out all over the place. He ported to the park, as that was the closest place where he could access Earth directly in large quantities. If he ground was covered with road or cement, then he had trouble seeing the power unless his eyes were at a full blast with the energy, and he guessed it would be difficult to get the energy lying far below. Once he reached the park, he flew up into the air and looked around for the best concentration of energy. He could see that it was very uneven and areas with the most energy were almost always covered with trees. Harry didn't want to take the energy from the trees. They were living creatures, weren't they? So every night he flew around the area trying to find the best source of energy, which he could use without having to kill something. It wasn't until September of that year that he found what he was looking for. His 5th and final year of primary school just got started and he was bored. Over the holidays, since Jess and Mike had the baby and couldn't take him on a holiday like last year, he finished the first half of the year's coursework with Jess tutoring him, when needed. Weiss sat at the back of the classroom with a forget-me on him and looked out the window at the energies floating around. He was asking his energy ball on what they could do to find the right place. Then, he felt as if the energy ball was excited about something and he felt it release a tiny tendril of energy from his hand into the air, where the energy hung around. That was when Harry saw it. The energy from the air started swarming around the tendril and he felt a pull on it. It was as if the air energy was asking him to follow it. He asked his energy ball what was going on and he got an answer B. Akin emotions and pictures like he always did, saying his energy ball asked the energy in the air for the answer. Harry sat up shocked. Of course, if his own energy, which was only 10 years old, can communicate back with him, the energy in the air and the ground can too. After all, they are like billions of years old, aren't they? That night Harry followed the pull from the air energy and flew to where it was leading him. He really didn't have a sense of direction as to where he was going. He crossed London and was still flying. After all these months he could stay up in the air for a couple of hours with all his skills up. So he flew for close to 90 minutes before he felt the pull get stronger. A few minutes later he could see in the distance a brilliant intersection of energies in the ground. The area where all these lines intersected was shining like a sun. As he came to stop, he immediately recognized the area. It was Stonehenge. Harry laughed as he flew a few feet over the lines. He could feel their energies as his own energy ball interacted with them. He landed right at the intersection and sat down. He laughed again as the energies felt like they were tickling him. The hair on his body was standing on its end. Harry put both his hands in the ground and allowed his energy ball to communicate with the energy intersection. When his energy ball communicated with the energy intersection, he got back what felt like joy and curiosity. So he sent it back memories of himself, his life, his energy ball, his family, his power and his desire to be a superhero. Then he sent out what he wanted to create and why he wanted it. Harry understood a long time back that if he wanted something done with his energy, he needed to not only tell it what he wanted but why he wanted it. T is the underlying need identifies his intentions and feelings and they are very important. It took a few minutes, but suddenly energy started erupting from the ground. Harry lifted his hands a few inches from the ground and the energy arched like lightning. His own power started mixing with the external energy and it was a sight to behold. All he could do was stare at the brilliant bolts of lightning as they slowly separated Harry's hands by a couple of feet. Then energy started to pool between his hands. If anyone were to notice that incident they would say it was Zeus himself, who came back to Earth with his lightning. The energy pooled for more than 2 minutes before it subsided back into the ground, leaving Harry to hold what looked like a large white blob of glowing metal or shining with a soft inner light. Harry was surprised by how light it was. An ore of that size should weigh at least a few hundred kilograms. He was also surprised to feel his energy was back up. He thought he would have to rest before he flew back again. But it seems the ground energy gave his energy ball some of its own energy. Harry smiled and whooped with joy. He kneeled and sent out his thanks to the ground for helping him. He got a warm welcoming feeling back from it and he shivered in joy. He concentrated on the metal, wanting to make it invisible. And he was again surprised for, he didn't know how many times this night. To see it become invisible much easier than any object he ever made invisible, including himself. He shrugged, guessing one of the properties of this metal would be for it to be very conductive of his sentient energy. It was Christmas of that year when Harry was set to unveil his masterpiece. He didn't get to spend much time with James until now, as he was so little and couldn't even crawl. He would often carry him around in the house and James always liked Harry. But now, in the last couple of weeks he started crawling a little and Harry enjoyed showing him some of his powers, like making his toys fly and changing the colors on them. He couldn't wait to show James some of the more exciting stuff they can do with their powers. Jess asked Harry to promise not to do anything in regards to the power and James, until he was much older, and Harry agreed. After having a good Christmas dinner, Mike, Jess, Harry started opening the presents as James played around with the bright gift paper, which changed colors. Unlike other families, Harry couldn't come in the morning, especially on Christmas Day, as his aunt would need his help. So they made it a habit of opening the gifts the preceding night. Harry got a certificate for a year worth of eye contacts from Jess. He knew how costly they were and also how useful they could be in the future. Even though when he pushed power into his eyes, he could see like a hawk, after a few hours, it always gave him a headache. He hugged Jess and thanked her. From Mike he got a large envelope. When he opened it, Harry was mesmerized with what he saw. It was a drawing of a boy, his size, in a hero costume. Thought you might like it, Superboy. You should change the design and make it your own. And once you are happy, I will help you make the costume. After a moment of staring at it, Harry whispered, "Every superhero needs a costume." Mike nodded. "That they do." Harry hugged Mike hard and laughed. "This is great, Mike, thanks." Then he jumped back and grinned at them. "What?" asked Jess. "I know that smile of yours. What did you do now?" Wait, first your gifts." He took out 2 small boxes and 1 large box from his bag. He gave the 2 small boxes to the adults. Jess opened her box to see a beautiful otherworldly ring. She stared at it shocked. "What is this, Harry?" she asked in a whisper. "It's a ring I designed out of mithril. It has a permanent and a very powerful shield charm on it and will always protect you as long as you wear it," he said before opening the large box. "I got a necklace for James as well. Thought he wasn't old enough to wear a ring." The adults stared at the gifts, lost for words. "This is the best gift you could have given us, Harry." "Thanks," said Mike, before he ruffled Harry's hair. Jess gave him a silent and heartfelt hug with tears running down from her eyes. James scowled. "Hang on, did you say mithril?" Harry laughed. "Caught on, did you?" He then explained his adventure at the Stonehenge. "We should go there on a trip this summer. You should see it, there's so much power there, it's breathtaking." The adults nodded. They gave up trying to stop Harry from taking these nightly trips. He did promise them that he wouldn't go trying to be a hero unless it was life and death, until he was ready, and he kept that promise. The only time he was involved in a dangerous situation since the fire was when he stopped a mugger from attacking a family of 3, and that too because he was flying close by when he heard the screams. "So what else do you got?" asked Mike. "You said gifts first. And I can see you are clearly excited about something." Harry gave them a broad smile and lifted his hand. "Lo and behold, I give you Thor." Harry gave them a broad smile and lifted his hand. "Lo and behold, I give you Thor." From his hand sprung a brilliant mithril shield in 3 concentric circles until it was 2 feet in radius. On it was the image of Stonehenge, surrounding a crisscrossed hammer and lightning. "You asked me to work on a shield, right? So here you go." "Brilliant, mate," whispered Mike. "It is, and you haven't seen the whole thing yet. It has some sentience to it. See, its energy is connected to my own energy ball, and with a single thought I can make it as small as a dial of a wristwatch or big enough to envelope me if I am being attacked from all sides. Here, let me show you." The shield, which was covering his upper body, shrunk back into a black bracelet with a white dial that looked like a watch and rested on Harry's left wrist. "See these bands? I made these with mithril as well, mithril string, only I changed the color. It's brilliant how easy that metal is to work with. The white dial on the band is the shield. Now I will extend it to 3 feet. The shield expanded 1 concentric level at a time. The shield produces as many levels as needed. Now, 5 feet. The shield expanded to cover Harry's entire 4 feet 9 inches frame. Now entire body, T. He shield circled Harry, covering him completely in a dome shape. Then within 3 seconds it was back to its dial size. Isn't it heavy? Asked Jess, worried about the strain Harry might feel. Nope. Light as a feather. Why did you name it Thor? Asked Mike. Because it can pack a punch. While I was working on it, I accidentally dropped it and it nearly crashed through the floor into the kitchen below. He shook his head and smirked. I had to use my Jedi mind trick to get my uncle and aunt to forget the noise. It was easy enough to repair the damage. It kind of reminded me of Thor's hammer from the comics. Mike laughed out loud until tears started rolling down his eyes. Oh Harry, I don't think I ever imagined I would meet someone like you. Everything you do is extraordinary. Harry blushed and shrugged. The next few months passed by fast. Harry was busy studying for the common entrance exams, which were in March. If Harry got more than 90% on his scores, he could get into one of top schools instead of the Stonewall High. He knew his relatives would send him to. He also had his martial arts classes where he was studying the 5th stage, much to the surprise of many. Harry knew that if not for his power he wouldn't have made such a huge progress. His goal was to be done with it by the time school closed for the summer. Every weekend Mike took him to a wooded park where Mike would use a paint gun to plow Harry, while Harry protected himself using Thor as well as his power shield. He also worked on his offensive skills, mainly a blaster and a stunner. Mike got that idea from Star Trek's phaser pistol. A stunner would render a person unconscious for an hour or until Harry wakes him up. A blaster is mainly used for blowing up stuff and not to be used on living beings, as it would more than likely kill them. Harry's stunner is a bright blue ray and the blaster a yellow ray, which were emitted from his hand. June was the month of celebrations. Little James celebrated his first birthday. Harry got into Reeds, one of the top schools, with a scholarship. The best part was that it was located in Surrey, and as it also offered boarding as a choice, he could tell the Dursleys he was staying there and stay at his other home with his real family. And finally, after 2 years of mugging through the screenplay and getting producers interested in it only for them to drop out at the last minute, Mike finally made his first sale and also got his first directing gig. He did confess to Harry that it was loosely based on The Boy Hero, and the sale could be because of the renewed interest his latest adventure caused. Harry helped rescue 4 hostages from 2 armed gunmen who barged into a house while trying to escape the cops. There was a standoff for over 2 hours with the gunmen demanding for a bus or that they would shoot the hostages. Harry heard the news. He was as ready as he could be to go into a hostile situation. He put on his new supersuit and it was beautiful. It as a black one-piece suit stretching from his neck to his feet in a tight body fit. It was partly lined with the remaining mithril he had on hand. The mithril made it durable, strong, and it would always fit him as he got older. It was highlighted with a white lightning bolt on the chest. He had Thor on his left wrist and his feet were covered in a cushioned layer of leather to give him extra grip. Finally, his face was covered with a black mask in the shape of a lightning stretching from top left to bottom right. He didn't need a forget-me anymore as his supersuit protected his identity. He flew as fast as he could to the hostage location. The area was busy with cops and TV crew. One of them pointed up in the air. "What is that?" Everyone looked up, when Harry stopped for a second above the scene. Before he ported down in front of a police officer. The officer jumped back in surprise, leveling his gun. He never believed in that superhero mumbo-jumbo the papers claimed. But he couldn't stop gawking at who could only be a kid dressed like a superhero. And acting like one with powers and all. Harry raised his hand in a sign of peace. "Fear not. I'm Bolton, I'm here to help." Harry grinned in his mind. He was practicing that line for a long time. Long story short, he turned invisible, flew to the house, peeked through the window, ported in, stunned the 2 gunmen, ported them out, and dropped them in front of the police squad. Everyone stayed silent for a second before the reporters and the TV crew surged toward him. The moment he saw them coming, Harry flew into the air smiling. He was enjoying giving them the show. After he reached a decent height, he ported away directly to his room at his home in London. Harry got up from his bed in number 4 yawning. This will be the last month he had to spend with his relatives for a long time. Reads started at the end of August and today was July 24th. His relatives were ecstatic, though it took the school's letter to convince them he wasn't pulling their legs. When Harry told them he won a scholarship to Reeds and he will be boarding at the school. Uncle Vernon even offered £50 for his school supplies, which Harry took, not that he needed it. Jess already got him the uniform and the books. He made breakfast as usual and went to get the post, when he saw a letter addressed to him. It even had his room on it and felt different. Raising an eyebrow, he tucked the letter into his pocket and went about his day. Once he was done with the small chores his aunt needed, he went to his room where he opened the letter and read through it with his eyebrows raising to the heaven. He wondered if this was Mike's idea of a joke. That man liked his jokes. He pressed a white crystal on his own mithril ring, calling out for Jess mentally. He added this feature to the rings recently. He created 3 tiny crystals, one for each of their rings, and put them in the mithril rings. Now when they wanted to talk to each other, all they needed to do was press the crystal and call out the name of the person who they wanted to talk to. And when they get a call, the ring will start vibrating, and pressing the crystal once will enable them to talk to the caller. If the person was busy and didn't want to answer the call, pressing the crystal twice would stop it. All 3 could talk to each other at the same time, and all talking can be done mentally. And after they finished talking, pressing the crystal once would cut the call. Harry also included another feature without telling Mike and Jess. The other 2 rings and James's chain are connected to his own ring, which was connected to his energy ball. If they ever get into trouble, he would know about it and also know where they were. "Hey Harry. What's up?" replied Jess in his mind. "Where are you?" "Just getting back home. Want to come over?" "Yeah, I want to show you something." Harry ported into his room and walked down the stairs to see Jess putting away groceries. Little James saw him and cooed in his baby language. He raised his arms, wanting to be picked up by Harry. "So what did you want to show me?" asked Jess as Harry picked up James. Harry gave her the heavy parchment letter with a scowl. "Is this one of Mike's practical jokes? I didn't want to call him as he would be on the set today." Jess went through the letter and looked at him, a raised eyebrow. "This certainly feels a little elaborate even for Mike. Let me call him." As it was, Mike was in middle of a scene and didn't call back until lunch, when he categorically denied sending the letter, though he was very interested in it. The next day, when they broke the set for a couple of days break, Mike came home and all 3 decided to write back to see what happens. "So my power is really magic then," Harry thought aloud. "But if there are so many of us with this power like me and James, why don't we see them? Maybe they hide it like you, Harry. But we never heard of anyone, except me, in the news. Hiding their identity is one thing. But why hide these powers completely?" Mike and Jess glanced at each other. They could guess the answer, but it would be better for Harry to learn it for himself. "Why don't you write to them? Maybe they can give you the answers you want." Harry nodded in acceptance. "What did they mean, 'We await your owl'?" asked Harry before he remembered something. "Do you think they use owls for post? Remember, I saw an owl last year, which was carrying a letter, and the 2 in broad daylight." Harry flew in the air out of his supersuit with a forget-me looking for an owl. He asked his energy ball to ask the air to find a nearby owl. Harry felt a pull and followed to see an owl heading away from him. He accelerated and leveled with a large, intimidating owl before keying it into seeing him. The bird screeched in surprise and flapped its wings. Harry raised his hand, offering it for the bird to perch. The owl looked at the flying human in confusion, before it landed on Harry's hand. "Can you please take this letter to Professor McGonagall at Hogwarts? They asked me to owl it to them." "So?" asked Harry helpfully. The owl tilted its head a little before it raised its leg. Harry took a moment to understand. "Oh, you want me to tie it to your leg?" The owl hooted. "Well, you certainly are a clever bird," said Harry, a little amazed that a bird could understand him. Then he laughed as the bird preened at his praise. He created a thread and tied the letter to the owl's leg. "Thank you," said Harry as he scratched the owl on its head. The owl responded back with a soft hoot and nipped his finger gently before taking off. Minerva McGonagall was going through the acceptance letters she got so far. She knew this year was going to be exciting. Every professor, well, not Severus or Sybil, but the rest were excited that Harry Potter would be coming to Hogwarts. Charles, Harry's grandfather was in her year and was a good friend. Unfortunately, both Charles and James were killed by you-know-who in the last war, leaving Harry the only Potter alive. The once prestigious and thriving house was on the brink of extinction. She sorted through a Muggle-born student's acceptance letter and smiled at the memory of introducing Ms. Granger to magic. She preferred to introduce Muggle-borns to the magical world herself, as she delighted in seeing their expressions. She glanced up, sensing a movement to see a large eagle owl heading for her. The owl landed on her desk and raised its leg, presenting the letter. Professor McGonagall took the letter and read it. She scowled after she finished it. She should have expected it. She marched towards the headmaster's office with the letter in hand. "Come in, Minerva," said a voice from the headmaster's office. She huffed in frustration. She pushed open the door. "I told you, Albus, I told you those Muggles were the worst sort. But you wouldn't listen." Albus raised a hand, stopping her tirade. "Why don't you take a seat and start from the beginning? Since the only Muggles who you referred to as the worst sort were the Dursleys, you must have gotten some response from Mr. Potter." She pursed her lips. "I did. Here, why don't you read for yourself?" She handed the letter to the headmaster, who put on his half-moon glasses and read it. "Dear Professor McGonagall, thanks for the invite to Hogwarts. I would appreciate it if you could send someone to explain more about magic and the magical world, as I have never heard of it before. Thanks for your time, Harry Potter." "Interesting," murmured Professor Dumbledore. "Interesting. That's all you could say," said Professor McGonagall in anger. "It seems Mr. Potter is uneducated about his heritage. He's no worse than what a Muggle-born would be. But that's the safest place for him until he comes of age. Nothing has changed, Minerva. I am willing to sacrifice a little knowledge for his life, wouldn't you?" Professor McGonagall sighed. What could she say to that? "I'll go meet with him tomorrow." Professor Dumbledore nodded. "You would need to tell him about his past and his special moniker as well." Professor McGonagall gave him a stiff nod and left the room. Dumbledore tapped his table in thought. It's time for him to enter this world again. I wonder what the future holds for him. For us. The next day Harry finished breakfast and was walking to his spot to the tree's at the end of the street to teleport to his London home, when he saw an old woman dressed in a robe walking in his direction. Harry slowed down to a stop as the woman approached him. "Mr. Potter." Harry nodded slowly. "I am Professor McGonagall from Hogwarts." Harry raised an eyebrow. "So the owl reached you? I thought it wouldn't." Professor McGonagall gave him a tiny smile. "Owls have a magic of their own. We have much to discuss today, Mr. Potter. Why don't we sit down with your aunt and uncle and I explain?" Harry frowned. "I don't think my aunt and uncle will appreciate that, Professor. I wrote that letter without their knowledge. Why don't you tell me what this is all about, and if I decide to go to Hogwarts, then I will tell them." McGonagall's heart jumped a beat. Harry Potter not going to Hogwarts? Very well, Mr. Potter. Is there a place where we can sit and talk? Harry nodded and pointed towards the park. There's a park down the street. They walked together in silence. And Harry used the opportunity to analyze the woman beside him. She definitely has the power, and her second energy was slightly larger than Harry's, but it wasn't as closely connected to the first energy as his was. And that confused Harry. He thought for someone as old as her, the second energy would be much larger than what it was and more closely connected to what he started calling life energy. Does it slow down with age? Once they settled on a bench, Professor McGonagall started explaining about the magical world. You must understand, Mr. Potter, the magical world is an entirely different world. We have our own laws, our own government, and the different aspects that make up a society. It would be impossible to explain everything in one sitting. Most of it you would need to experience yourself. So I will give you some highlights. The most important rule of our world is it's hidden. That means you are not to do magic in front of Muggles. Muggles. Non-magic folk like your family. We call them Muggles. Harry thought it sounded derogatory, but kept silent. The second important rule is, students younger than 17 cannot perform magic outside school. 17 is when you are considered an adult in our world. Hogwarts is considered one of the best schools in Europe, and most students from Britain attend that school. There are 2 smaller schools, and if you wish I can give you their details. Hogwarts has 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw and Slytherin. While you are at Hogwarts, your house will be like your family. Do you have any questions so far? Harry laughed. I can think of a few questions, Professor. But can you tell me more about magic? What is it and what you can do with it? She gave him a smile. Magic is something very few people are gifted with. Think of it as a power you can wield to do what normally would be impossible. She took out her wand and flicked it around them. Harry sensed something very similar to a forget-me form around them. I just put up a notice me not around us. If any muggles were to pass by, they wouldn't notice us unless we go out of our way to make ourselves noticeable. Harry gave her a nod. It was exactly the same as his forget-me. Then the professor flicked her wand again and turned a nearby rock into a pig and then the pig into a cat and then the cat into a chair. Harry stared at that display in surprise. He never thought of doing that. Though he never had a need to do it. That's called transfiguration. Changing one object to another object or animal. It's a very complex field and shouldn't be taken lightly. I will be teaching this subject for all 7 years of your Hogwarts education. The other primary fields of study include charms, where you will learn to levitate objects and much more, defense against the dark arts, where you will learn to defend yourself against the darker forces of our world, potions, which is similar to Muggle chemistry, and herbology, where you will study out magical plants and how to care for them. There are of course more complex fields of study, some of which you will have an option to study in the 3rd year and some you learn if you apprentice a master after graduating from Hogwarts. Harry nodded slowly. Is there a prospectus, Professor? Professor McGonagall expected this question. Many Muggleborns ask it every year. Unfortunately no. Because of the secrecy involved. We prefer not to give out prospectus to students who may decide not to join. But when you go to buy your course books, you can buy related material to understand the world better. Harry nodded again. What's the stick you used before to do the spells? It's not a stick, Mr. Potter, it's called a wand. And you will get one as well. Do you need a wand to do the spells? You can't do them without it. Wandless magic is a very difficult art. Only the most powerful wizards to date were ever able to do any wandless magic, and even they need a wand to do anything significantly powerful. So how does a wand work? McGonagall sighed. If this keeps going they would be here all day and they have some important aspects still to discuss. I think we will leave the discussion about magic here, Mr. Potter. You will be able to find all the answers in the books you can buy in the store. There are some aspects that are yet to be covered. Harry nodded slowly. All right, Professor, please continue. It's my understanding that your relatives never told you about magic. Seeing Harry nod, she continued. It's unfortunate as you have a history in our world. A famous history. You see, Mr. Potter, like all societies we have good and bad in ours as well. A few years ago, a wizard went as bad as one could. He gathered many followers under his banner and they attacked those that didn't stand for their beliefs. On Halloween of 1981, this wizard attacked your parents and killed them. But when he tried to kill you, for some reason his curse backfired and hit him. No one knows what happened to him. But since then he was not seen. Because you survived the one curse no one has ever survived with nothing but a scar. And because you in effect defeated this dark wizard, you were hailed as the boy who lived. Harry touched the scar on his forehead and stayed silent as he absorbed the details. What was the wizard's name? The dark wizard who killed my parents. Professor McGonagall sighed. We do not say his name, Mr. Potter. People still fear it and call him you know who or he who must not be named. But for your sake I will say it once. The dark wizard's name was Lord Voldemort. Harry thought it was entirely silly and it seemed the magical world had a fixation on hyphenated names. Voldemort. I'll remember that name. After a few minutes, Harry looked up at her. So my parents were a witch and wizard. And powerful ones. Your father was very gifted at transfiguration. Your mother was famous for being the best at charms and nearly as good with potions. They were good people, Harry. And it was sad to see their lives cut short so abruptly. You look much like them. If not for Lily's eyes, you would look exactly like James did at your age, though you are slightly taller and do not wear glasses. Quote. Harry gave her a small smile thanking her. I used to wear glasses, but I am using contacts now. You know my relatives, all they ever said was there was no such thing as magic. They never told me anything of my parents other than their names. Unfortunately, I do see it a few times in the Muggle world. Once in a while, there will be a parent who couldn't digest that their child is magical. They are too caught up with religion. So what happens to those that decide not to attend? Well, in the case of a Muggle-born, the knowledge of a magical world is wiped from their mind by the government. Other than that, we don't do much. In the younger years, when the magic is unstable, children would experience bouts of what we call accidental magic. This is triggered by emotions and it cannot be controlled. But after they reach a certain age, for most, 11 years, the magic stabilizes and the accidental magic drops down to only the most emotional events. So the risk of someone finding about the magical world is negligible. So if I decide not to join the magical world, the government will erase all my knowledge of magic. Here Professor McGonagall frowned. Yours is a significantly different case than a normal Muggle-born. Not only are you famous in our world, but you also have your family assets to consider. Your father came from a very rich and known pureblood family. You have quite the assets at your disposal in the magical bank, Gringotts, which is controlled by goblins. Goblins. The professor nodded, giving affirmation. Goblins. Not the friendliest creatures you will find. But they do know how to do their job. I believe you have a trust vault set up by your parents until you come of age. Here's a key for that. She removed a small golden key and gave it to Harry, who took with interest. Going back to your question, I honestly don't know, Mr. Potter. Being from a pureblood family, you are expected to be part of that world. So I doubt your memories will be changed. But you would need to show just cause for not attending one of the 3 schools in Britain and you would be held to the same laws as anyone in our world. I will be honest, Mr. Potter. You not attending Hogwarts was never considered as an issue. I understand where you are coming from, ma'am. But ultimately, the decision will rest with me. Very well. Shall we go see Diagon Alley? It's the only magical shopping center around London and that's where all the major stores are, including Gringotts. Harry gave her a nod and they got up from the bench. Harry observed. Ed, as the professor removed the forget-me spell she put with her wand. I am going to take you using a method we call apparition. It's where you disappear from one place and appear at another. I will be sidelong apparating you. It will be slightly uncomfortable, but please do not try to fight it. Harry nodded and the professor took his hand and they were gone. They appeared back again in a narrow alley. This way, Mr. Potter. For your information, we are at Charing Crossroad. We will be going to a magical pub called the Leaky Cauldron. That's the gateway to Diagon Alley. Muggle wouldn't be a BLE to see this pub unless they are accompanying a wizard or a witch. Harry followed her, listening to her explanation. The Leaky Cauldron ended up being an old rundown-looking place from the outside. When the professor opened the door, everyone in the pub went silent. They recognized the professor and a few greeted her. Hello, Professor, anything to drink? Asked a bald man behind the bar. Not today, Tom, Hogwarts business. Tom gave Harry a quick glance before he turned around to his work. The professor took Harry to the back of the pub and stood in front of a wall. Remember this pattern, Mr. Potter. Then she tapped 5 bricks in a particular order and the wall started to move brick by brick and soon in front of them was a gateway. Harry's senses were starting to overload. There was so much energy in the air. Not as much as Stonehenge, but more than any other place he ever saw. And the shops and the people, they all looked so magical. Harry couldn't help feeling excited about seeing such wonder. The professor first took him towards a white marble building, with the words Gringotts printed clearly on it. Harry got a first glimpse of a goblin. He tried to analyze one as they waited in a queue. The goblin had only one energy and it was a mixture of both the life energy and the power energies. Soon it was their turn. Mr. Potter would like to make a withdrawal, said Professor McGonagall. Onagal and Harry presented his key after the goblin asked for it. Soon Harry was in a roller coaster ride to his vault. The professor explained the magical world's economy system and how it worked and how it can be compared to the Muggle currency. Harry was awed at seeing so much gold and silver. He never had any money of his own and before meeting Jess he only had a handful of possessions. So it came as a huge surprise that he was rich. Not just rich, but filthy rich. According to the goblin that took him to the vault, his trust fund had 100,000 galleons equivalent of currency in it. That's 500,000 pounds and just less than 1% of his monetary assets. The rest were in his family vault, which he will gain access to at 17 according to his parents' wishes. After a cart ride back, they went to the bookstore, where Harry purchased a few books which talked about the theory of magic, the different fields of magic and the laws of the society. Professor McGonagall also suggested that he buy Hogwarts: A History and the Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts, as it had more information on the even that made him popular. By the time they finished it was lunch and the professor suggested they have some in the pub. Harry readily agreed, as he was very hungry himself. He sent a mental message to Jess, so that she wouldn't be worried. They sat at a table when Tom approached them with a smile. "What can I get for you, Professor? How about the lamb stew and a butter beer, Tom?" "Aye, lamb stew it is. How about you, lad? I am Tom, by the way, the owner of this pub." Harry shook the hand of the friendly owner and smiled back. "The same will be fine, Tom." "And I am Harry Potter," answered Harry before Professor McGonagall could stop him. Tom stood there for a moment in shock, still holding Harry's hand. The soon-to-be 1-year-old looked at the owner in confusion. "Bless my soul, it's Harry Potter," blurted out Tom for the whole pub to listen. That was when Harry remembered that he was famous in this world. Soon a whole mob of people came to shake his hand. "All right, that's enough. Behave yourself. You are all acting like a barbaric mob," scolded the stern professor. "Most of those in the bar were taught by here in the last 3 decades and they were cowed by her anger." Harry couldn't believe he had such a following. Being a famous is one thing, but this is completely insane. When he whispered that to the professor, she gave him the reason. "You must understand, Mr. Potter, you know who was winning the war. People were dying every day and no one knew whom to trust. It was a very traumatic period. When you know who was defeated, the entire world was affected by it. So many people are thankful even today for what you have done." After lunch, the professor apparated Harry back to Surrey. "I hope you would decide to come, Mr. Potter. I will personally be very disappointed if you decide not to. I will let you know my decision in a few days, Professor. I just need some time to think about it." Later on that day, Harry, Mike and Jess read through the books to understand what the magical world is about. "I still can't believe that a whole world exists in secret with a government, laws and everything," said Mike. "I am more worried about Harry being famous for defeating a dark wizard people are still afraid to name." Harry snorted. "Can you believe that? How can I defeat what the book says? I was the most powerful dark wizard ever as a baby. It must be my parents. They must have done something, and since I was the only one alive, they credited to me." There was a few minutes of silence. "Remember your scar," said Jess. Harry nodded. "I thought about it. When Voldemort used that killing curse on me, and it failed, it must have left something behind." Harry shivered. "Thank God it's gone. I don't want a link with someone who would murder so many people, including my parents." Mike chuckled. "Ah, but he's your super villain, Harry. And the hero and villain are always linked with some unseen force." Harry shrugged. "I guess. But no one saw him in 10 years or so. So what do you want to do, Harry?" Harry thought about it. "I can learn everything by myself and get the ideas from the books I can buy in the alley. Maybe there are other books, but the few books I bought on how magic works didn't have anything about sentient energies, dial energies, the energies in the air. Nothing. Most of them seem to think that magic simply was. So I don't think Hogwarts will help much. But I also don't want anyone to know I can do all this stuff wandlessly. It seems I am rather different even in this world. And I just hate being famous for something I couldn't possibly have done." "But what about your family estate? I can live in both worlds, can't I? And if nothing else, I can with Dr. The money when the time comes into pounds." "But you said you liked Diagon Alley," pointed out Jess. "I did. It was amazing. I will take you guys tomorrow. I will just need to change my appearance. I don't want to be mobbed again, and I certainly don't want them linking you guys to me." As Jess said, "Who knows what kind of enemies I might have." "It looks like there's something else bothering you," prompted Mike. Harry gave him a nod. 2 days later, Professor McGonagall got a letter from Harry saying he won't be attending Hogwarts. If someone were to be looking at the end of the street, they would see an old man appearing out of nowhere. But no was, and the old man walked down the street toward his destination. Albus Dumbledore was troubled when Minerva showed him her memories on meeting with young Harry, like her. He was surprised that Harry wasn't more excited about the magical world during the meeting. He asked many valid questions, but the emotions behind those questions were not the ones he expected to see from someone who never heard of magic before. And then yesterday Harry sent a letter declining his position at Hogwarts. This troubled the old headmaster. Harry must be trained for what lies ahead. He reached number 4 Privet Drive and spent a couple of minutes examining the wards. They are indeed as strong as he first placed them. He stepped into the drive and rang the bell. Few moments later a young boy around 5 feet tall answered the door. The headmaster disagreed with Minerva's assessment of young Harry. He looked much like James. But he had more than Lily's eyes. And, without the glasses, he looked like a good mix of both his parents. Harry recognized who the visitor was immediately. He saw a few pictures of Albus Dumbledore in the few books he bought on his second visit to Diagon Alley. Professor Dumbledore smiled. "You must be Harry." Harry gave him a pleasant smile and nodded. "I am, sir." Then, there was a holler from inside. "Who is it, boy?" bellowed Uncle Vernon. Harry smirked inside and called back. "It's Professor Dumbledore from Hogwarts, Uncle Vernon." There was a brief bit of silence, before he heard his uncle and aunt scramble from the dining table to the hallway. "You!" shouted Aunt Petunia on seeing the old wizard. Professor Dumbledore gave her a pleasant smile. "It is I, Petunia. It's been many years. We don't want freaks inside this house." "Out! Get out!" shouted Uncle Vernon, turning bright red in anger. Professor Dumbledore ignored the rude behavior and continued as if he hasn't heard it. "I am sorry to intrude on your lovely home, Mr. Dursley. I just want to talk to young Harry here for a few minutes and then I will be on my way." "He won't be going, I tell you. He won't be going. We swore to put a stop to this nonsense that day we took him in," bellowed Uncle Vernon in anger. Dumbledore straightened and Harry could feel the power radiating from him. He chose that moment to analyze the old headmaster. Harry was floored by what he saw. Professor Dumbledore's power energy was huge. It was like 3 times that of Harry's. But what he found intriguing was his power energy and life energy were not as closely linked. It was about the same as Professor McGonagall. "I assure you, Mr. Dursley, magic is not something you can put a stop to. You are either born with it or not. I am merely here to discuss why Harry didn't want to go to Hogwarts." The Dursleys were cowed by the headmaster's radiance, but were more surprised by the later statement. Aunt Petunia stared at Harry gobsmacked. You knew and decided not to go." Harry shrugged. "I had my reasons." Professor Dumbledore placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "Is there somewhere we can talk in private, Harry? Why don't we head up to my room, sir?" He led the Headmaster past the gawking Dursleys and up the stairs. As Professor Dumbledore neared Harry's room he felt what seemed like a notice me not on the door. It didn't have exactly the same feel to that spell, but quite similar. This confirmed his suspicions that Harry was in contact with someone from the magical world even before he got his Hogwarts letter. The bedroom was very small and barely adequate. When he stopped hearing any complaints from Mrs. Fig, he hoped that Harry was getting treated better. But if this room was any sign, that was not the case. "I am sorry there isn't much space, sir. Can you create yourself a chair?" "Not to worry, my boy." He swished his wand and a nice plush chair appeared out of thin air. "What I did just now is called conjuration. You will learn about it in your 7th year as part of your transfiguration course, that is if you chose to come." Harry gave him a nod and settled down on his cot. "So what did you want to talk about, sir?" "Just that, Harry. Out your reasons not to come to Hogwarts. I gather that Professor McGonagall told you about Voldemort." "Yes, though you are the only person I heard using that name." The headmaster smiled sagely. "Never fear the name, Harry. Fear of the name will increase the feat itself." Harry nodded back. "I agree and I don't fear him." The headmaster smiled back with a twinkle in his eyes. "Then you are braver the most in our world. But unlike what many people might think, I know he's not dead. I'm afraid, one day he will come back, Harry, and when he does he will look for revenge on the person who destroyed him." Harry stared at the headmaster for a minute. "It's a reasonable assumption, Professor, but I am still not interested in coming." The headmaster nodded back in seeming acceptance of that decision. "Might I inquire of the reasons?" "I read about you, Professor. You are a hero to the magical world. You defeated Grindelwald and put a stop to the Second World War. You fought against Voldemort, and also helped many people with their problems. I respect you for that. But how I can trust you with my secrets? After all, this is the first time we are meeting in person and you are also the head of judiciary body in the magical world. Professor Dumbledore stayed silent as he thought about a solution. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a couple of candies. Lemon drop. I find it helps me think clearly. Harry took one. Thank you. After tasting the candy, he thought it was a bit too sour for his tastes. After a few minutes, Professor Dumbledore came to a decision. Do you know what a magical oath is, Harry? Harry gave him a slow nod. I read about them in a book about the laws of the magical world. They can be used to form legal contracts, which are then enforced by a binding magic. Indeed, agreed the headmaster. If one was to give a binding magical oath and then went against the basic rules of that oath, a severe penalty would be enforced by magic herself. It could be the loss of doing magic, or even death. Depending on the severity of the breach. I'm willing to give you an oath that I will never repeat what you will tell me today to anyone without your expression permission. Will that suffice for you to share your secrets with me? Harry frowned. Are you sure, sir? I don't want you to get hurt because you had a slip of the tongue. Professor Dumbledore chuckled. It doesn't work like that, Harry. The oath will prevent the person from, as you put it, slip of the tongue. One needs to make a conscious decision to break the oath. But why are you willing to do this? Doesn't it affect your job as the chief of the wise? Wizengamot. If you did something illegal, then yes it will. But I feel that I have a greater responsibility to you. Many years ago, that night after your parents were killed, it was I who decided to give you to your aunt, the only remaining blood relation you have. Though I knew of the jealousy your aunt had for your mother, I hoped she would take care of her only nephew. You see, Harry, I believe, though I do not have proof, your mother sacrificed her life for you. In doing so, she gave you an ancient blood protection based on her love for you. This is why I believe you survived the killing curse. After that night I knew Voldemort's followers would be out looking for revenge. I used the same magic as your mother did too. Recreate the protection around this dwelling. As long as you called this home, no one who means you harm can touch it until you became an adult. Harry frowned. Is that the red bubble shield around the house? Professor Dumbledore sat a little straighter. That was unexpected. Indeed, we call them wards. And that red bubble shield, as you called it, is a blood ward. Harry nodded back in agreement. Yeah, it's very powerful. This intrigued the old wizard even more. How do you know this, Harry? Harry smiled back cheekily. One of my many secrets, sir. Indeed, you seem to have many secrets for one so young. As I was saying, it was my decision to put you in the house. If that led to you doing something illegal, then I am as responsible for it as you are, and as such I will protect you in any way I can. Harry thought about it. All right, Professor. You give me your oath and I will tell you my reasons for not wanting to come to Hogwarts. The professor raised his hand to the air. I, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, swear on my magic that I will not repeat what Harry James Potter tells me today to anyone without his express permission. So I swear, so mote it be. There was a brief flash of light and the oath was sealed. Harry shook the professor's hand. Thanks, Professor. I have 2 reasons for not wanting to come to Hogwarts. 1, I don't believe Hogwarts will teach me much, and 2, I don't believe I will fit well with the magical world. The headmaster stroked his beard. Tell me about the first reason, Harry. Why do you think you will not learn much at Hogwarts? I bought a few books on how magic works and about the different courses, sir. And frankly I was disappointed. They don't talk about what magic is and where it comes from. They only talk about the many limitations. Wands, wand moments, spell incantations. I don't believe in limitations, sir. The only limitations are your own ability and your imagination. Do you know what martial arts is, Professor? Seeing him nod, Harry continued. For the last 2 years I learned an art called Jeet Kune Do. I just finished my 5th level out of the 8 levels and am the youngest person to do so in the entire world. I believe and live the basic tenet of this art. To have no limitation is the limitation. The books I read are very limited and restricted in nature. If Hogwarts is similar to my old school, where we learn from books and just practice what's in them, then I will be miserable there. Why do you believe that these restrictions are not needed for magic? Harry got to his feet. One of the limitations I researched was about flying. Every book I read said wizards and witches could only fly with the help of a broom or a carpet. Professor Dumbledore felt a wave of power emit from Harry, before he started floating in the air and sat with his feet folded close to the ceiling. As you can see, sir, that's completely wrong. It took me a while to learn it, but I can assure you, that I can fly better than any broom will allow me to. Professor Dumbledore stared at Harry with a look very few people had ever seen on his face, that of complete shock. He schooled his features and studied the magical currents around Harry. You learned this on your own, Harry. The young boy nodded. Mike and Jess helped, but they are not magical and only gave me some ideas. The professor wondered who Mike and Jess were, but put that question aside for the more important questions he had. What else can you do, Harry? Harry shrugged as he floated down and landed on his feet. Anything I want really, as long as my energy ball has enough power to do it. If it doesn't, I will have to borrow energy from an outside source. Borrow energy. Harry nodded seriously. That's another thing I failed to see anywhere in the books. No one talks about the energies in the world. There's so much everywhere. In the air, water, earth. Yes, I can see the magical flows, which I understand you can as well. It generally takes a long time for one to develop that skill, and they need to be moderately powerful to do that. But what do you mean by borrow? Well, you talk to your energy ball about what you need and why you need it, and your energy ball will channel its energy through your body to talk to the energies outside. You cannot take the energies against their will. You will need to ask for it. Ah, and how does one go about talking to the energy ball, by which I assume you mean the magic inside you? Harry nodded. Yeah, it took me a few months of meditation to get it right. The first time I talked, it was like talking to a baby. But the more I talked to it and more I taught it, the more it learned. We have a good understanding now. Professor Dumbledore nodded in deep thought. I must confess, though, I have heard of magical objects with highly concentrated amounts of magic like in Hogwarts, being sentient. I have never heard of a person's magic being one. I need to think on this further. Very well. You talked about a second reason for not fitting into the magical world. Harry nodded. Other than the fact that this world has too many limits, I cannot understand the bigotry against non-magical people and even among magicals. Why does blood matter? Why use different terms like muggleborns, half-bloods and pure-bloods? I simply don't get it. You are either magical or not. And I also don't understand why this world is hidden away from the normal world. There are so many problems that could be solved if both the worlds can work together. Professor Dumbledore couldn't help but smile. Ah, the wonder of youth. You might not believe this, Harry, but when I was young I dreamed about a world where the magical and the non-magical people can exist in harmony. But alas, it was not to be. Our world has always been a small one, Harry. And we have always been afraid of the non-magical world finding about us and, for lack of a better word, exterminating us. Harry shook his head adamantly. I don't believe that, Professor. Yes, people would be afraid at first. But once they start to learn more about us, they will learn to accept us. It will be the same with the magical world. Fear comes from the unknown, sir. Remove that unknown and you will remove that fear. John F. Kennedy, the American president, once said, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future. And we are all mortal. So how can a society like the magical world sit ideal when so much good can be done with the power it wields? The magical world has great power, sir. And with great power comes great responsibility. To deny that responsibility is to deny that gift we were born with. Dumbledore stared at Harry with a heart swelled with pride. That's the most compelling argument I heard till date. There have been a few proponents, who wanted to combine both the worlds, but many wanted to do it for the wrong reason and they didn't have enough power to bring about a change. He took a huge breath and stood up. He started pacing the small room, which he enlarged to a room thrice as big with a flick of his wand. You outlined many good reasons for not coming to Hogwarts, Harry. But let me give you one reason why you should. Being a magical society, we primarily believe in magical power. There have always been powerful people who hang the magical world for good or bad. Most in our world will follow these powerful individuals if they choose to lead. And it's these powerful people who can really affect any change. But magical power comes with age. I might be considered as a very powerful wizard in our world, but I was also part of this society for well over 100 years. For me to advocate change at this point would be futile. Many would consider me insane. In fact, few already do. What we need is someone new, someone young and powerful, someone who can relate to the next generation, and someone our society already puts in a high place. What we need, Harry, is you. You quoted something wonderful. With great power comes great responsibility. Take this responsibility. Don't try to change the world by yourself, it is too big. But instead lead the future generations of wizards and witches to become what you are now, Bolt, a superhero. Isn't that what the papers call you? Harry was surprised. How do you know that? Professor Dumbledore chuckled. Unlike many in our world, I like to know what's happening in the Muggle world. After you showed me your flying skill, and heard what you said, it was easy for me to connect the dots. Harry smiled. Yeah, I'm Bolt. That's how I started working on my powers, you know. I wanted to be a superhero so bad, that I figured out how to do small things at first and then learned more from talking to my energy ball. Quote. The headmaster nodded. I don't doubt you, dear boy. It takes uncommon dedication to do what you did. But Harry, there is so much to magic that you still don't know. There is much we can learn from each other. Take the responsibility, Harry, and lead our world into the future. Maybe it's fate or magic itself that brought about it, but you are so uniquely posy on to bring about this change than anyone in the past 300 years. Harry stayed silent for a few minutes as he absorbed what was said. Then Professor Dumbledore saw magic flowing from the ring on Harry's finger in two different directions. He knew Harry was doing something with it, but waited for him to respond. Harry opened his eyes to find the headmaster sitting there patiently. Sorry, sir, I was talking to Mike and Jess. They invited you to lunch, by the way. Indeed. Were you by chance using that ring of yours? Harry was surprised again, and then it clicked. Oh, you saw the energies around the ring. The professor nodded and Harry continued. Yeah, I created 3 rings like this, so that Mike, Jess and I can talk when we want in our minds, just like a telephone. May I see it? Huh. RRY gave him the ring and the professor observed it closely before waving his wand a few times over it. Interesting. How does it work? Harry explained it to the professor. Ingenious, Harry. I dare say. This would be an extremely profitable product, if you were to sell it to the wizarding public. But I don't believe I am acquainted with this metal. Oh, that's because I created it. Seeing the professor's questioning expression, Harry related the story of how he wanted to make a shield and his finding the energy lines, which the professor explained are called ley lines, at Stonehenge, and using that power to create the metal. After that, Harry showed the professor his shield and how it works and answered many questions on that topic. Harry, my boy, I do believe that it's been a while since I was surprised so many times in a single day. Now, you said your friends invited us to lunch. Well, they are more than friends. They are my real family. Them and little James, of course. Do you know little James is magical as well? Harry then explained how he met Jess and Mike and how he saved Mike's life. When Harry took the professor's hand and teleported them to just outside his London home. The professor was again surprised by the ease with which Harry did it. But he was more surprised when he felt a blood ward around that home. I put up that ward myself, explained Harry. I asked my energy ball, I guess I should call it my magic now. I asked it to analyze how the ward you put at number 4 works, and then when I learned the intention behind it, I put it up across our home here. My magic actually cut my hand for some blood and then healed it. The lunch went well and Professor Dumbledore liked Mike and Jess and they him. It was decided that Harry would attend Hogwarts and the classes with his year mates. But every weekend he and the headmaster will meet in his office and discuss about magic and teach each other everything they both know. Professor Dumbledore flowed into his office from Mrs. Figgs and saw his deputy waiting for him. Professor McGonagall for her part was very anxious and was quite surprised to see a bounce in the old wizard's steps. Albus, how did it go? Were you able to convince him? Professor Dumbledore chuckled. I see you're anxious. Not to worry, Minerva, Harry Potter will be attending Hogwarts. Here's his acceptance letter. Professor McGonagall took it and gave it a quick read. How did you manage to convince him? You didn't force him, did you? Professor Dumbledore chuckled. Oh, I don't think I could have forced him to do anything. No, Minerva. It was his and only his decision to attend. Well, what happened then? Why did he change his mind? I truly wish I could share that information. But I gave young Harry a magica. Oath not to reveal what he told him today. The deputy headmistress was taken aback. A magical oath, Albus. What possessed you to do that? It was needed at that time. But I will tell you this. R.R.Y. Potter will change this world in many wonderful ways. I'm sure of it. Then he laughed out loud and made Professor McGonagall jump in her seat. She never heard Albus Dumbledore laugh like that. It's going to be exciting times, Minerva. Very exciting. How I wish I was young again. The deputy headmistress smiled. I don't think I ever saw you laugh like that, Albus. Now, Quirinus confirmed that he would be coming back to teach defense. And Hagrid wants to know when he needs to deliver the Cerberus. Professor Dumbledore tapped his fingers and thought. We will come to that. But there is something more pressing we need to attend to. Call for a staff meeting. I have a proposal I very much like to get the staff's opinion on. Harry Potter was walking in Diagon Alley with his appearance slightly altered. He didn't care for being mobbed. Today was also his birthday. But Mike was back at the shoot and Jess needed to take care of little James. So Harry decided to go about his shopping alone. Professor McGonagall did show him a few important stores on his first trip to the alley. The Dursleys didn't bother him at all except for asking if he was going to Hogwarts. Aunt Petunia was disappointed when he said he was going. But Harry didn't really care what they thought. They never cared for him before. It was just Mike and Jess' opinion that mattered to him and they were encouraging him from the start to attend the magical school. He gave back the £50 to Uncle Vernon on his demand. Harry smirked. It's not like he needed it, did he? Harry was just entering Madame Malkin's to get his school robes, when a blond boy his age strutted past him with a sneer. Harry shook head in wonder. What a ponce. After getting his robes, which Harry was not a fan of, he continued to get his schoolbooks and a few others, which he felt had good ideas. After books he went to the apothecary for potion ingredients and then got his potion supplies as well as the telescope. Harry thought about getting an owl but decided not to. The only people he would write to were Mike and Jess and he could already talk to them through his ring. His final stop was Ollivander's to buy his wand. He entered the dusty stop and took a step back as if he had been delivered a physical blow. His magical energy automatically tuned his senses for the power levels in Diagon Alley after his first trip, but this shop had so much concentration of raw energies that it overwhelmed him. His magic adjusted his senses and Harry opened his eyes to see a wonderful sight of beautiful colors flowing from the thousands of boxes lined up along a wall. Harry guessed they were all wands and he could see that every one of them was unique. Harry also saw a bright energy, which the headmaster explained was an aura, nearby and glanced at it. My, came the voice of an old man as he faded in. He had gray hair and large moon-like eyes. He looked at Harry excited. I never thought I would see someone like you in my lifetime, Mr. Potter. How do you know me, sir? Your disguise, though good, cannot fool me. I remember every wand I ever sold, Mr. Potter. It seems only yesterday that your mother and father were here buying their first wands. You look much like your father. But your eyes are entirely your mother's. Harry nodded. He half expected someone to recognize him through the disguise. He was after all in the magical world, isn't he? Why do I need to buy a wand, sir? How will it help me? Every wand is different, Mr. Potter, just like every wizard or witch is different. The wand has a magic of its own, which comes from the magical core within it. The core is usually a magical animal like a dragon, a phoenix or a unicorn. To do any kind of focused magic, you need a tool, which can force the magic wit in you to the surface and then use it to fulfill your intention. But I am sad to say no wand will ever work for you. Harry looked confused. What do you mean? I can see your magic, Mr. Potter, and it's very different. On the surface it might look the same, but I can see its true nature. You don't need a tool to force your magic out. You call on it and it responds. Harry narrowed his eyes. How do you know that? Like you, Mr. Potter, I can see magic. But my gift is far more powerful. You must be born with it. So I can't use a wand. The wand maker kept staring at him with unblinking eyes. No, you cannot. But I might know of something that you can use. I know of only one wizard throughout known history who had trained his magic like you did, Mr. Potter. He's legendary in both the worlds. Then he went to the door and put a closed sign and locked it. He passed Harry on his way back and kept walking inside. "Come, Mr. Potter, we have a trip to make." Harry followed him, curious. "Who is this wizard you talked about, sir?" Quote, "Can't you think of a wizard who is more famous than anyone in history?" Harry thought about it. He could think of only one wizard who was regarded as the greatest of all. Merlin. He was real. He half asked and half stated. One of his most famous names. His real name was Merlin Emrys. And yes, Mr. Potter, he was quite real. Ari Ollivander reached in to his pocket and pulled out his own wand. He touched it to an old belt and it glowed blue. "Come, Mr. Potter, touch this belt and it will take us to our destination." By now Harry was curious with excitement. Even to him Merlin was a great hero, and to know that he was not just a myth but also a real figure was exciting. Once Harry touched the belt it activated and they vanished from the shop. They arrived in a seeming blend of colors on a snow-covered mountain. Harry nearly lost his footing, but swiftly balanced himself from years of learning martial arts. Harry shivered as he felt the chillness overtake him. He was not dressed for this environment. But a moment later it was gone as his magic realized the situation and erected a temperature-controlled field around him. Beside him, Ollivander chuckled. "This way, Mr. Potter," he said as he walked uphill. Harry followed him with only a slight difficulty. Luckily it wasn't windy and it was easy enough trek for the athletic young boy. He feel the magical energies around him. The whole place was glowing with energy. "Where are we, sir?" "The Himalayas." An hour of trekking later, Harry sensed they were nearing. Throughout the long trek, he could feel the energies increasing, and now it was like he was nearing the sun hidden in a tornado. It was so much more than what he felt and saw in Stonehenge. "Are we getting close?" asked Harry. "Do you feel it, Mr. Potter?" Harry nodded. "This is a very sacred place, Mr. Potter. We are nearing the center of the world. The place where all the ley lines of the world meet." He paused, his voice in wonder. "The focal point of all magic on this planet." Harry stared at the wizard in front of him with wide eyes. "Wow, an amazing place. My family has been gifted with true sight, Mr. Potter. We see the world in all its forms. That is how my grandfather found this place and passed the secret down the line. To my knowledge you are only the 5th wizard to visit this place and 3 of them have passed away." "How do you know Merlin was here, sir?" "Because it was my grandfather who brought him here, just like I am bringing you." Harry stopped in shock. But, that means you are." Ollivander chuckled and turned around to face the boy. "Yes, Mr. Potter, I am quite old." Harry frowned. "If you are that old, sir, you must be quite powerful, but I don't see that." The wandmaker gave him an eerie smile. "Having been gifted with true sight, I know many ways to hide my true power." Harry looked confused. "But, why couldn't you talk to your magic?" "That, Mr. Potter, was something I never knew. I tried talking to it as you said, but I could never accomplish what you did. Magic, as you know, is alive, Mr. Potter. And it knows when and to whom to give what. Consider yourself truly blessed." Harry was confused. All he did was talk to his magic. Soon they stopped in front of a cave. "In you go, Mr. Potter. I will wait for you here." Harry took a tentative step inside. He could feel the power radiating from inside the cave. Throughout the journey his magic kept bringing down his senses to adjust to the powerful environment. He knew the ley lines intersected somewhere inside. He could feel it. He took a few more steps inside the cave, when he saw stairs leading down. Harry took them down to a platform, where he was enveloped by magic so powerful that he stumbled. He felt as if the world turned upside down. He felt as if he was floating in vacuum. He channeled his magic into his hand and asked it to analyze the power surrounding him. But as soon as his magic started to interact, the overwhelming feeling stopped and the magic around him settled into a pleasant hum. Harry understood that it was some kind of a security to only let the right person through. He started feeling a pull and he followed it deep inside the cave. As he turned a corner his jaw dropped and he stared ahead in awe. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and don't forget to check out author of this story. Details in description.